Good evening. Tonight, we're continuing the solo challenge streams. So, tonight, we're doing Temple of the Fist, and then see how far we can get there. Then we move on to the next dungeon on the list. Not exactly sure how many of the Stormblood post-game dungeons we're going to do, but typically the way this goes is if I actually conclude I already know before we enter that, oh, this boss isn't possible, there's a good chance we'll skip it. There's also a possibility that we just decide collectively to skip something when we're bored of doing Stormblood post-game, for example. I think most of the dungeons in Stormblood are pretty interesting, so I don't see much reason to skip, though some of them might be a little brutal, but we'll have to take that when we get there. Right, so welcome to the solo challenge stream with me, Kaitsuchaiji. If you want to know kind of what the rules we're working with are, they are in the description. Which means we are going to be doing dungeons alone, so no other players allowed. So that means we have this. Unrestricted party and level sync means we can enter a dungeon completely alone. Normally, what we did before we reached a Realm Reborn post-game is that we would also use minimum item level and silence echo. The reason why we stopped using those is... The reason why we stopped minimum item level is because it turns out that by the time you reach, like, the first post-game dungeon of a Realm Reborn, the item level difference between minimum item level 45 and synced 110 switches it from being completely impossible on 45, like actually you might not be able to kill a single mob. You might be able to. I do believe we proved that it was possible to, if you could split up every pack so you could kill them one mob at a time, you could do that. But you needed like 3 minutes per mob. 1, 2 or 3 minutes. And there's more than 90 mobs in a dungeon, so can't do that. So instead of wasting time like pushing up to like the first boss and then discovering that we can't do it, and then having to go back out, crank up our item level bit and then go back in and do it again, we have instead just typically I've elected to just go in synced. But I've kept the full rule set as is in the description. We also won't be using Blue Mage, just for the most part, because Blue Mage is a little overpowered. You can take almost any dungeon where you're going. I don't think a job can do it, and Blue Mage can. Like, for example, turns out Blue Mage can solo Susano, the normal version trial in Stormblood. Blue Mage can, a normal job cannot. Like, that should give you a pretty good idea of how incredibly busted Blue Mage is, just in general. I do believe it requires to be unsynced, but you get the idea. So that's why we're not using Blue Mage. Typically when we bring out the Blue Mage, it's for the memes or for the fun of it. Like if we failed a dungeon, failed a solo dungeon, maybe we'll bring out Blue Mage just to show, oh no, it is possible, just not normally. Normally you can't do it, or alternatively, I am not good enough at the game to do it, or I don't know a trick or something. Sometimes other people discover that you can do it. Yeah, Lemon, so I believe Matthew J, which is also a common viewer of the channel, I believe, went in with Blue Mage and pushed their echo buff to 50%, and then they were able to one-shot Susano from like 50% HP to 0. The reason why that is necessary is because, and I've talked about this before, Susano has a soft intermission move where he will switch to that intermission with a big sword that you need 2 players for or you die. He's this soft quote-unquote enrage, or whatever you'd call it, like intermission switch, happens at around 50-45% or so. That's when he will probably do it, when he's finished his current mechanic. Like, he will finish up what he's doing, and then he'll go and do the intermission. If you push him down below, like, I think it's like 40 or 37% or so, he will just animation cancel out of whatever he's doing and do the intermission immediately. So you have to either one-shot him from 50% to avoid the soft version, or one-shot him from around you know, mid 40%-ish. So that you avoid the hard intermission switch. That's the reason why you can't just solo him with a normal job, because even if you could do like 20% of his HP and damage, he will cancel instantly and just leave. Also, hey Lemon, hey Zach, hey Amokios, and hey Aradel, and hey Gassel. I hope you're all doing very well. Yeah, I don't remember what the context for that was. I think we were talking about maybe Blue Mage can do it, and Matthew just went and did it. I think Matthew is also one of those that were soloing dungeons like in their own time alongside me to see if they could do it. Yeah, exactly. Susano is the stopping point in the Can You Solo Final Fantasy XIV. Which is also why it's even sadder that I believe Wrath Games themselves, you know, big Final Fantasy XIV solo man, discovered that if you complete a dungeon or a trial or a raid, whatever it is, with Blue Mage, then the MSQ does not acknowledge it. So like this fact that Blue Mage can do it is just, that doesn't change anything, unfortunately, because you can't, like, even the game says you can't use Blue Mage for that. That would be cheating. Hey Vyak, hope you're doing well. Right then, so the next one on the list was Temple of the Fist. So fun fact about Temple of the Fist, I think I mentioned that last time as well. When Blue Mages were, like, their level cap was increased to 70, so you could get into Temple of the Fist, there are some spells there. I believe one of the spells, I don't know if there's multiple, but I'm pretty sure the Rose of Destruction. Yeah, that's the... exactly, that one is from Temple of the Fist. The trash packs in Temple of the Fist were, most of them were entirely immune to deep freeze. Which of course made it a lot harder for a Blue Mage because Ram's voice applies deep freeze. I believe like a few weeks later a hotfix came in, or like, you know, patch, like a smaller patch, and one of the fixes was the mobs in Temple of the Fist are no longer immune to deep freeze. And I was sitting there, Blue Mage player who had soloed the dungeon without deep freeze. But I thought that was working as intended. Gleaming says, I know Blue Mage is limited or whatever, but the way they treat it makes me not bother playing it. Yeah, the thing is, the way that they treat Blue Mage is, I think the best way you could explain it, the best way you could, like, reason it, is that imagine that it's like a mini game inside the game, that you can pick up this ridiculously absurd job and do things. I don't know why, like as Vyak says, I don't know why you can progress the MSQ unsynced when you can't with Blue Mage. I don't know. Like, I really don't know. Because as you said, like, unless there is some sort of thing where you need a Blue Mage for the gimmick, then a normal job unsynced can do it just as well. Like, the only thing that means that Blue Mage can solo Susano and a normal job can't is because Blue Mage has, for some reason, the biggest single hit in the game. Just for some reason. Yeah. And that's the only thing that makes Blue Mage that good. In most other situations, the thing that makes Blue Mage really strong is that with White Wind, they can be tanky like I mean, like a tank who's like wearing tinfoil instead of actual plate armor, right? Because that's about how tanky Blue Mage typically feels. But then you can also heal almost like a real healer. I also agree on that one, Cat Damon. Honestly, like a solo Blue Mage should honestly qualify for this. Like, that's technically a complete Blue Mage group. If there's only one Blue Mage and no one else, that's technically a Blue Mage group. I think that should qualify, and I agree. That is also the reason why I don't have the check mark on most things. For some reason, it doesn't count. Also, if anyone's wondering, I mentioned that I had a little bit of a cold Tuesday. Still working on that. Mostly over, it feels like, but I might be coughing or sniffling a bit. And my voice might sound a little bit different. Right. Limited job, very limited. You have to do everything in a specific way. But the weirdest one is probably the MSQ thing. I'm even wondering if, because the thing is, all I know is that I heard the story that Wrath had been had been power leveling his Blue Mage and prepping it with spells and stuff, and then he tried to complete, an MSQ relevant encounter that he was having trouble with. Only for the quest to not acknowledge it. Like, it just didn't count. So what I'm wondering, does that mean if you are like a warrior and you bring your friend who is a Blue Mage in and you complete it unsynced, for example, or even synced, does that not count then? He only tested New Game Plus. Well, New Game Plus should work the same way, right? But anyway, my point is it the presence of a Blue Mage that invalidates the clear, or is it the lack of a presence of a not Blue Mage that is invalidating the clear? That's what I'm wondering. Right then, so with that sadness out of the way, we're all probably disappointed that Blue Mage is so limited of a limited job. I think it's about time that we do Temple of the Fist, which I already know Blue Mage can solo because I did it. When it was harder. And I'm, as always, just using my max level gear with the exception of bringing the Shadowbringer's relic weapon, which has been optimized so that it gets basically the maximum possible amount of stats out of it all. Yeah, that's true, Vyak. If the problem was just that there wasn't a normal job in the group, then Wrath could probably have circumvented that by just bringing someone. I don't know if we can do the gigapulls as we always do. I do know that these moss barriers are really, really weird. And I won't be able to have full uptime on them either, because our predominant strategy here is run away. Quite often. Ow. So sometimes we simply won't be able to cleave with the quirls there. I should have made sure that I had more space to run. Congratulations on Ninja level 90, Amokios. What is it? Is it... Oh, it's the wall that I keep smacking my camera into. Oh, we killed something. Yeah, exactly, Lemon. We reached a point where it's like Warrior is so insanely busted that a way that we try to both weaken it a little bit or make it a little bit less boring, but also just as an extra challenge, I'm trying to do the big mega wall-to-wall pulls whenever possible. Like, I pull as much as I can in every single pull in these dungeons. Which has led to things like me going, oh yeah, you can, like, every single wall-to-wall pull in Shisui of the Violet Tides, you know, the mega one after the first boss, you can do that solo. Meanwhile, you cannot solo the first pull in Bottom's Metal. Like the Giga pull at the start of Bottom's Metal. You can't solo that. Can't. You just can't. Because there's too many ranged mobs. Which is ironic. Oh, right. There's the landmines here. These things pop and slow you down if you step on them. Yo, whoa. That got a little close. Always remember, Decimate has is really slow to connect. Yeah, I think it's the reason why I thought that discovery was so funny, Lemon, is because so I have a video that I'm sure a lot of you might have seen on the hardest wall-to-wall pulls in Final Fantasy XIV, and one of the pulls that I got a lot of comments on, that why didn't you include this or why didn't you include that? That's clearly harder than Bottom's Metal, which was the one that I ranked the hardest. I have solo pulled most of those alleged impossible pulls on these streams, like, so far. So, like, that doesn't mean that they are easier than people say. It just means that this strategy I'm using here is viable against them. The reason why you can't solo the first mega pull in Bottom's Metal is because there's too many ranged mobs. The reason why you can solo the Giga pull in Shisui of the Violet Tides is because there's not that many ranged mobs. There are ranged mobs in the pack, but not that many. Like that's the thing. That's also why in that video I highlighted some of the reasons why a particular pull is difficult, because there's more to it than this pull hard because reasons. It's really scary to run into the mobs like this. Exactly, Lemon. It's almost like it was my personal opinion. To be honest, some of the pulls people mentioned were pulls where I was like, I didn't remember that pull existed. Or, I've never seen anyone actually do that in recent memory, but now that you've made me aware of it, I'm certainly doing it every time I do this dungeon. Hardest pull is the first room of Aurum Vale. I mean, yeah, if you pull everything, that would probably be one of the hardest pulls with no competition. But there's also the consideration of do people actually do that pull? Like, I'm pretty sure there's no benefit to using it. And you're right, Gazalai, I'm forgetting to use Shake It Off. I should. The reason why it can be a little scary is because if I use Shake It Off while Raw Intuition is active and I'm actively using Raw Intuition, then it eats my Raw Intuition. I'd rather have Raw Intuition. Hey Steve, hope you're doing well. That's why I'm not, like, aggressively using it, but I really should. I should just, you know, have the awareness to use it while Raw Intuition isn't up. The thing is, the full Aurum Vale pull, there's no benefit to doing it these days, because the mobs don't give any XP. Back in the day, when all the mobs in a dungeon gave individual XP, there were some strategies that might sound completely backwards or unintuitive or dumb even, that weren't bad. A particular example of that is, you know, the seedlings that turn into like mini marbles? The seedlings, I believe, gave like 600 XP or something like that when you killed them. If you let them hatch, they gave 6,666 experience. Which I'm sure totally is a coincidence. But the point is that they gave way more experience if you let them hatch. So whenever I was doing the dungeon and I saw anyone who was like, they were actually in the level range, or I was myself when I was leveling a job way back when, I would try and implore the party to leave the eggs alone, so that we got more experience. And people were usually very understanding of that genius strat. But yeah, nowadays there's no benefit to pulling more than the absolute minimum in Aurum Vale, which I mean that's true for all dungeons. Hey, Fatman, the hardest pull is any big pull with trust. You know, actually, that is a good point. If you ever meet someone saying that the Giga pull at the start of Sastasha is Lamau easy mode, just ask them to try and do it with trust, because if it's that easy, then they surely can do it with bots, right? Does that mean Heat of Battle doesn't help in dungeons? Oh, yo, it works. All the experience is from the bosses, which are technically mobs that you gain experience from through battle. But it has to be the boss. But that's an understandable confusion. Right. What I remember of this one is that, so to take the picture for this thumbnail, I had to clear through the dungeon unsynced. And this one took surprisingly long. Like, it had a lot of HP. Oh, that was fast. If I remember correctly, if one of them dies, then the other one becomes really angry. So it's better to cleave them as best we can so that they die somewhat at the same time, I think. I mean, this is also nice. Like, this is really easy to dodge. That is mildly painful. There's also the part that as long as there's two of them, I get double value on my raw intuition. That's true, Lemon. The reason why people don't do that nearly as much anymore is because due to power creep, I think it's possible to kill both of the machines, like however much HP they have left when you've killed the other one. The reason why you need to kill them together like that is because when one of them dies, the other one starts a self-destruct cast, and that wipes the raid. But because the duration is, like the cast time is relatively long, you can often just kill it in that time. I have wiped to it in Endwalker. But it's, oh. Need to make sure that I'm following this one whenever they split like that, so I don't get caught off guard. I expected this to be a lot harder, given how strong they were when I was in here unsynced. like, they weren't threatening in the slightest, but they seemed like they would be more of a challenge. Yeah, that sounds about right, Viek. I've talked about this a little bit previously, but the reason why big AoE pulls are kind of pointless with trusts is because, for the most part, trusts, you know, duty support, they don't really do AoE. It's not really a thing they believe in. So you doing a big mega pull as a tank mainly just means you do more damage. And this is further hampered by the fact that it seems, I haven't done too much testing on that, but it appears it's at least a certain possibility that your duty support NPCs will slow down if you go too fast. Like, they'll start doing less damage so that you don't clear too quickly. Which would of course mean that breaking your back, trying to speedrun the dungeon, would basically just mean that you're rushing just for the NPCs to sit down in their chair and relax even harder. Which might not be super helpful in the long run. Like, a particular example I observed was I was testing something for my tutorials video somewhat recently. And that meant that I went into Sastasha, as I believe it was as Bard that I noticed it. If you don't do anything, you just pull the pack, you don't do anything, then after a while the warrior will use Berserk, and the Black Mage will use a Thunder that does so much damage that it has to have been with Thundercloud, which is very interesting given that you don't have Thundercloud in Sastasha. Oh yeah, well, there we go. And, well, I mean, the healer's just going to continue spamming Stone. But the point is, if you wait long enough, the NPCs will just go, like, they'll go Super Saiyan and just decimate whatever you're fighting. Eventually. The keyword being eventually. Yeah, basically they'll go sicko mode. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, coming through. Hello. Excuse me. Oh, a bear! It's a dancing bear! That doesn't look like dancing. They have better spells than you. Well, I mean, it's always funny when the NPCs have something they shouldn't be able to have. Like, one of the weirdest ones is still, to me, and will never stop being... Okay, what was it that did all that? That was a lot of damage. That's something happening here. Something... Was it the big bird here? Something suddenly did like half of my health as like a big AoE hit. Hey Samben, it's going, I think it's going well. I think we might die to this pack. Ow. Fortunately, this isn't like a hardcore run or something. I can just come back and go again. Hey Chloe, hope you're doing well. The Fall Guys section, also featuring a dancing bear. Exactly, the Fall Guys section. Maybe I can do something by just running really, really far away. Uh-oh. So I could just get away from this Fall Guys section, as you aptly put it. So I think I can dodge the big wind attack by just running really far away. So that one might be... Oh, right. There was a screen change. I completely forgot. Well, a room change. In that case, we don't have very much space to work with, and this rush over to the start might not have been the best choice after all. All of my things are on cooldown. All of my things are on cooldown. Hey HK, hope you're doing well. Okay, I'm starting to get some cooldowns again. I just really need to make this, like these dashes as long as possible so that I don't have to deal with the Fall Guys section. Oh, weird lag spike. If you had Black Mage, they'd all be dead before they could hit you, just saying. I don't think it works like that. Highly exaggerated amount of Black Mage power. No, even better. I know what we're looking for. That is the definition of how Black Mages picture themselves doing damage. As opposed to how much damage they actually do. They still do a lot. Black Mages could leave a scathing review. You know, I remember when I started these solo challenge stuff. I think it was Matthew. It might have been someone else who said, "Oh yeah, Black Mage can solo Zastasha. You just need to bring enough potions, and then you just use Scathe mainly." Zuguya says, "Why don't you use mitigation?" I am using mitigation. As you can see, they're on cooldown, some of them. The reason why I don't use it while I'm running away is because the enemies spend a lot of downtime not, you know, hitting me. But I do use mitigation. It's just that the enemies hit so hard and I don't have the recovery to keep up with that, so there's no point just standing my ground. It's safer to just run away and then engage them when I have healing. I'm not sure why I have the Dancing Bear focused, but I do. I think we might be able to finish them now. Yeah, I am using mitigation. I used Arm's Length a little bit ago by accident. The reason why I don't get to use Arm's Length that much in these runs is mainly because by the time because of the amount of time I use running, I can usually cycle between Vengeance and Rampart and maybe Thrill of Battle, and by the time I'm like, maybe I should use Arm's Length. One of the other ones already anyway. I should just use Arm's Length more now that you mention it, Suguya, so thank you for that. Now that you mention it, I should have been using Arm's Length just on top of whatever else I'm using if I can't find a common place to use it normally. apparently my damage buff ran out. I spent so much time not doing the combo. The slow only matters while I'm in melee range, that is true. It's going to probably be kinda niche how much it's going to add up to. Simply because, as you said, Kadema, I'm running a lot, but sometimes it could lead to one mob missing a swing opportunity because I left as their swing timer was slowed. It's not going to add too much, but it's always better than nothing. Like, if the cooldown's just sitting there ready otherwise, then I guess it would be better to use it than not use it, at least. Amogus says, I already love Machinist. Just screaming, yeah! When I shoot a bullet as Hrothgar is the best. You know, it is quite funny how vocal all of the ranged physical jobs are. Like, I'm pretty sure if you ever hear, you know, you're in an alliance raid, maybe you're in a raid, maybe you're in a trial, and you hear, you know, one of the classically known to be quote-unquote annoying voices, and you hear it, usually the reason why you notice, at least to my knowledge, is because they're saying a lot of noises. Like, they're saying a lot of noises. And the reason why they're saying a lot of noises is because they're like a dancer. Dance and Halafel are the best. They're good as well. I think someone said that Small Kai has quote-unquote one of the annoying voices. I didn't know. I just chose the one that I liked. Called it a day. Oh yeah, this boss coming up might be really difficult. Thank you, Lemon. You think that our goth girl in Endwalker, the Reaper test dummy, is anything new? This is the monk test dummy. Well, to be fair, the goth girl gives you like an evaluation. Fore and aft. That doesn't sound very nice. Uh-oh. I should have waited. Oh, it doesn't last very long. That's good. The worst part is I knew that was what the attack did, kind of. A speed test? You mean a test of your reflexes? Yeah, basically. Okay, you can't dodge that one. I'm guessing I'm supposed to do this. Port and star? So sides? Yes, okay. Okay, so apparently there's no punishment for only being alone with that sun and moon seal thing. That's nice. Tapas! That sounds nice. Can I have that? Not like that. Fore and aft. Ow, 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 ow. The wrong kind of tapas. Yeah, exactly. Tapas of tasty destruction. That's how you're supposed to do the mechanic. Port and star. Okay, so I do nothing? Oh. Well, unless this boss suddenly pulls out some sort of like hidden secret technique, then I think we're good. Why are there 4 of them? Does it punish me in any way? Why are there 4 of them? What? Huh? Just wait until he pulls out an actual plate of tapas and you get a food buff. What? How did you do that, Amokius? How? Come play Final Fantasy XIV. We have tapas, big fat tacos, and lots of donuts. For some reason, some of us call them dynamos. Don't worry about it. You know, I really like those kinds of you have to attack me from this particular side kind of mechanic, because the bosses are typically extremely clear about it. So you get punished for just blindly attacking. And because of that, oh, now we're back to 2, okay. Because of that, it feels like it's totally reasonable for the boss to give like an extremely harsh punishment for doing it wrong. Because you could just have looked at the boss. Like, the reason why you're getting punished is because you didn't respect the boss. Like, you obviously didn't respect the boss. Exactly, Ravana has it. He either blocks from both sides or from front and back. The annoying thing about that is because he does it from front and back, and I believe he still turns while he's doing that. It means that the tank can't attack for a few seconds without, you know, risking getting smack back from Ravana. Like, the main tank doesn't really have any response. Ravana's retaliation is laugh-worthy though. No, I'm actually saying I've seen some people die to that. And if you've ever wondered why the main tank suddenly starts taking ridiculous amounts of damage as a healer, that's because the main tank didn't respect Ravana's retaliation. Because he retaliates on every hit that you do. Every hit. That's why you hear like that swing, 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 swing sound repeatedly, is because he does the animation for the retaliation and the attack every time anyone does it wrong. Oh, that's significant. We can exit this room. Yes, I also hope you liked my swing sound. The best swing sound effects. More smoke! Can I run through here? I can't. Apparently it's solid smoke. Wow, what was that? Very good swings. Many good swings. Wait. Oh, they reset! Well, that's no fun. These are fake monks, they don't use Dragon Kick. Apparently they don't know how to run very far either. They don't exactly understand the riddle of the wind. Ow. One of them hits really, really ow. No, it's all of them. It's just that they do it in bunches. Scary. First blood. I'm also pretty sure Way of the Blade is not something monks should have. No. Listen, I'm a monk. Why are you casting Holy Spirit? What's this clemency? Don't worry about it. I'm also a monk. What do you mean Gaeskagul is not a monk ability? It's Way of the Lands, don't you see? It makes perfect sense. Our ability should have friendly fire turned on. That sounds like a bad idea. Also, I'm pretty sure it's already on. It's just that it only targets your eyes. Yeah, Axe Monk. I'm actually also a monk. I'm Way of the Axe. I'm Way of very angry. Way of the Angry. Way of the Scythe. Way of the Farm. Another one down. So what makes these mobs scary is like they're not like anything special to write home about. It's simply put, they all have an agility that they can use. Like they just have an extra attack they can use, which means that when you're fighting 5 of them, it feels more like you're fighting 10 of them. And well, you saw me run away from like 4 mobs earlier, so you know. Way of the frying pan. Way of the developer. I like Way of the frying pan. Let me just wait for my sprint. No. Excuse me? Oh, a treasure chest! Yoink! Yes! Like 1,000 gil in value or something like that. It's all I've ever wanted. Ow. Wait, why is that Quirl separate? Why didn't that get pulled with the pack? What's happening here? Oh, that's a lot. Let me just go and check if the second pack resets. It does. I think. Oh, only the humans. Weird. Weird dungeon. What's going on with this? Well, that means I'll have to make this room work, I guess. Which might not actually be possible. Ah. I can't do that with that many mobs, I don't think. Or maybe I can if I just get a proper go. Yeah, this dungeon is really, really janky. Let me remind you. Let me just remind you that in a patch after monks got Way of the Blue Mage monks got access to this dungeon. The developers later realized that, oh, most of the mobs are immune to deep freeze for some reason. Let's remove that. That's weird. Like, this dungeon is just weird. It's just really, really weird. I don't understand why it is supposed to be so weird. That wasn't patrolling there earlier, I'm pretty sure. Do you go in and patrol in the room then? And I just didn't see this? Okay, I just didn't see its entire patrol route. That explains some things. You're still weird though. You're still weird. Also, I just realized it's the way of the blade. There's a bunch of ways of the blade here. Ow, 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 ow. I'm using that health, you know? I need it for later. Later being right now, but I need it. I'm using that, you know? Hey Tristan, hope you're doing well. What? Why was one of the cats over there? What's happening? What are you doing? Way of the hide and seek. This is indeed a dungeon. Technically it qualifies as a dungeon. It doth be one of the dungeons of our time. Truly the dungeonest dungeon ever, indeed. I'm also wondering with these spirit flames that keep spawning. They just feel like they're just randomly a part of this. And despite all of this, I'm actually pretty sure the boss at the end is going to be harder. Because I do remember that he was really hard when I fought him as a Blue Mage. There's also the possibility that I was just bad. You know, as always an opportunity, like an option on the table. Maybe you just bad. I should have used that potion during Thrill of Battle. Well, too late for that now. We're just about there. I'm sort of assuming that the scary part of these packs are the monks. You know what I mean? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. The monks. What? What? So this particular curl doesn't matter, huh? You just turn off the disco lights just for that? Does this one not deserve disco lights and smoke? Is this what we're doing? What did this particular girl steal your lunch? Or what's happening here? I guess that curl was the one from the previous pack or something. Curl didn't finish his dinner plate. Yeah, me too, Lemon. I also learn a lot by like letting the packs get a chance to do their thing. It's quite wild. Right, boss time. Spirit Wave is what? Tank Buster? No, Raid Wide. Wait, oh, with a secondary effect, it appears. Hurricane Kick. Ooh. Mildly annoying. Touch of Slaughter. That sounds really, really scary. Ow! Right. Now I remember, that was the mechanic that I was really afraid of with Blue Mage. He just sets you to 1 HP. So I have to keep that in mind. As long as he, like, if he doesn't have any attacks that are particularly threatening, then I have no reason to use my healing as long as I'm, like, okay-ish. Because he's just going to use that Touch of Slaughter and set me down to 1 HP. And I just have to be ready for that when he does it. Uh-oh. How much are we talking? Only 5? Well, that was a waste. I used like 3 cooldowns for that, expecting him to just decimate me. Oh, I was supposed to yoink those. Mine. No. My damage buffs. Mine. I got most of them, so take that. Ow. And... okay, that was another 5,000. Decimate is a warrior skill, not monk. No. It's a it's what we call a way of the axe. They're just cross-classing. I'm wondering, does he set me to 1 HP or does he kill me? It seems he just sets me to 1 HP. That was my most efficient use of cooldowns because I was a little concerned that he was going to just smack me with an auto attack. I think this is fine. Just barely. Can you step out of the tornado, buddy? So the game plan, because he doesn't use that Touch of Slaughter very often, the game plan is whenever he sets me to 1 HP, I use Equilibrium to just get back to like a decent amount of HP. And then I'll just use everything else the rest of the time. It's easier to deal with most of his mechanics if I already have plenty of HP, so I don't have to use anything, because it appears that all of his attacks are kind of meh in terms of damage. It's just Touch of Slaughter that is really, really, really concerning. Is he not going to do the damage buffs thing again? Because if he's not, then this is pretty good. You will not survive this. 5,000 damage. I guess he was expecting to get more of his damage buffs, because it probably would have hurt a lot more if he did. He also keeps saying it's time to unleash my true power. And then he does this thing. I think he's done this like half a dozen times. Has he released his true power yet? Because I'm starting to wonder if there is a true power, if he's just making it up. Oh! He does damage equal to the damage needed to set me to 1 HP. So if I have a barrier, I will not drop to 1 HP. That is a lot. That feels a lot safer. I think I'll try to do that from now on. His true power is 1,600 damage. Time for my true power. That is a slightly annoying wall. That can you not that? Time to unleash my true power becomes twice as big for like a second. My signature move. I'd say his Touch of Slaughter must be his signature move, because that is probably the one he's done the most damage with per use. We did it! And it only took 51 minutes. Thank you. I thought that was going to be a lot harder, but the thing is, the only thing I remember from this dungeon, from doing it as Blue Mage, is 1, the weird deep freeze thing, and 2, that this boss was scary. Now, the reason why this would be interpreted differently from a Blue Mage perspective is because back then, at level 70, your best options for healing if you were a tank, which was like I was tank mode Blue Mage, your best options were White Wind, which heals you and everyone around you for 100% of your current HP. That's a problem. Or you had to use Palm Cure, which is not that impressive if you're not a healer. You know, 100 potency. So basically, I had to just... He just did touch of Slaughter, and then I just spam Palm Cure on myself until I have enough HP that White Wind does something. And then I have to, like, recover MP again with Blood Drain. Meanwhile, as Warrior, you just go Equilibrium. Anything else? Weirdly, this fight felt easy as Warrior, I think. nice. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, right. We have Drowned City of Scala. I guess that's a perfect one to do next. Right? You've got here with your Aura Alt. I see you've gotten yourself some dye. And some glam. Did Aradil buy you this? No, they didn't. Oh. Well, it would have been fine if they did. It just wouldn't have surprised if they did. Right. Drowned City of Scala. Like most. Did they update Scala recently? Yes. They did. They did update Drowned City of Scala. I'm pretty sure they changed something about the second boss and something about the third boss. You don't turn into a monster now. Oh yeah, that's right. The trash packs. Where you turn into a little, like a big monster creature. To like fly from spot to spot. You don't do that anymore. Oh, I'm sure, HK, I'm sure that if you just asked in the chat, someone would have told you where my Final Fantasy 14 house is. I do bring it up, like, near the start of streams, sometimes when I remember. I didn't do in this one. Partly because, I mean, there might not be that much excitement in visiting when I'm just, you know, passing through for a few seconds between runs. But normally I include, like, oh, just come here. That's where I am. But it's nice that you can just search for it. That would explain how some people just find my house without asking. I believe the reason why they, like, so the thing is, all dungeons, pretty much all dungeons that have gotten duty support enabled, you know, over the past few years, basically, they've gotten some changes, and typically the thing that has changed is either that some kind of polish has been added, like they've done something that makes makes the dungeon a little bit nicer, maybe something that makes it a little bit easier, or maybe just changes some things that doesn't necessarily make it harder or easier. But usually the reason why, like the motivation for changing these things, is often that it makes it easier for an NPC, read a computer, to traverse the dungeons. For example, in Alamigo, the second boss that has that, you know, spirit detachment thing where you have to like get back to your body, by removing the death claws that chased you normally, it means that the NPCs just have to like dodge laser beams. And maybe those laser beams come in an entirely predictable manner, and if they do, then the NPCs that you have with you, your duty support, can just walk in a predetermined path and it'll be perfectly fine. Which means they can deal with the mechanic. The NPCs need to get good. I mean, to my knowledge, so they've changed the dungeons since, but in the old version of Brave Flock's Longstop, you know the dragon that would shoot out like poison at you? And if the dragon ended up parked on the poison splashes, it started to heal. Well, what I noticed after doing Brave Flock's Longstop, you know, the old version, like 10 times for the emotes with Trust, I noticed that it didn't matter what role I was playing, the dragon would exclusively exclusively shoot the poison at me. Like, it just acted like the bots weren't there. That is a very interesting way to solve the problem of the NPCs don't know how to dodge it. The boss just won't target them with anything that they don't know how to dodge. So yeah, when you say the bots just need to get good, correct. They do. Easier solution is to just serve the encounters in a way that they understand it. Or that they can deal. When you have so many enemies that the individual hits from the attack takes so long to resolve that you can queue up another attack before it finishes. Why does the big one spend so much time just not following me? Can you stop doing that? People complain that Final Fantasy XIV is getting easier to accommodate for the new people that are bad at the game. Really, it's the NPCs that are bad at the game, Demon says. That's a pretty good one. The interesting thing with that argument that the game is being made easier to accommodate the new bad players is also kind of weird. Because we all were bad at some point, right? No. We were all born gods, just knowing how to play Final Fantasy XIV perfectly, just at birth. We just came out into the world with like the game manual in our hands, including the people that were born before the game was released. We just knew. Right, first boss. You know, the interesting thing is that trash took like 6 minutes to clear. I wonder if it would have taken more or less time if I'd like done it pack by pack. Like what I'm getting at is ironically there's a good possibility that it's actually faster to pull it the way that I do. Oh yeah, that's also true. The bubbles don't follow you on this boss anymore. Hey Lawrence, what do you mean by where? What did I say? I've already forgotten. Help me. Thank you, Banana Rose. I'm glad that I could help. Bloody puddle? Well, it does appear that they still chase. Were you thinking of something else, Aradil? Oh, they don't chase very far. I can say that much at the very least. Maybe that's what you meant. Like, I do remember they chased you a lot more back in the day. Like, they used to move enough that you had to start running. I mean, same seas, right? They chase you like 2 feet. Better get scared. And that's also true, Gazel, and I think that also actually leads to a lot of the discourse where people are like, why is it everyone so bad at the game? Grr. Because they don't remember that they also had to learn the game at some point. I'm gonna get ya. What's it that like thought experiment with if you were immortal and got like a ton of money, like would you take becoming immortal and also getting like a ton of money, but there's a snail that also is immortal and will chase you to the ends of the universe, and if you come in contact with the snail, you both die, or something like that? Would you take the offer? That's how it goes, right? I'm gonna get you. Said that we were all bad players at one point, and because I'm still a bad player, I said, what do you mean by were? Oh, I don't know. I think a big part of becoming better at video games is like realizing where you, like what you can do to get better. So if you acknowledge that you're not great at the game, that means that there's room for improvement, right? If you think that you are the best, you don't need to learn anymore, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for someone to teach you the things that you don't know. So acknowledging that you don't know is kind of a roundabout way of being good. Uh-oh, I should not have done that. I should not have done that. I should not have greeted that hard. Yeah, exactly, as Lemon says, you're not experiencing the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, if you think that you are like a master of the game, then that naturally means that there's significantly less space to improve on the game, because you think you already know everything. The keyword being you think. You don't know if you know everything. Like, a lot of the time when people pose something completely outlandish that I have never heard anyone suggest before, like, if I don't know whether it's true or not, I will usually go and test it. Yeah, because sometimes maybe I've never considered their perspective. Like, a really weird one that I was presented somewhat recently was that someone claimed that reprisal, which is the debuff you apply to nearby enemies, is a tank that makes them do 10% less damage. It makes them do 10% less damage for 10 seconds. The claim was reprisal doesn't work unless reprisal is already on the target before they start casting. As opposed to you can use it and it works as long as the cast hasn't finished. So it wouldn't work now, but it would have worked if I used it 2 or 3 seconds sooner, was the claim. You know how you test that? You go out into the open world, get hit by a casted attack from an enemy, and then the second time they cast it, you use reprisal before it finishes. If reprisal worked and you take less damage, then you know how reprisal actually works. But the thing is, I had never considered the alternative. I had just kind of assumed that it worked like that. There's always space to learn something new. I would have been very disappointed if I was proven wrong, but instead I learned how to test a new thing. Lemon says, if the snail was going at snail pace, I'd take the deal absolutely. Yeah, usually the way that thought experiment goes down is that people say, oh, I'll just go through this entire process of hiding away, like making sure that the snail gets put in something where it can never get out. But the thing is, are you sure that it can never get out? Like, absolutely sure that nothing could possibly lead to it getting out. Remember, it's just as immortal as you. I've also heard someone say what they'd actually rather want is to do something that made sure that they themselves lived in constant motion, so that they knew that they were always getting further away from the snail. I could literally take one big step back and prolong my lifespan by like 15 minutes. And now we tune into Life of Lemon with the snail. You just see this guy just like traversing their house in like a big circle to make sure they don't run into the snail. And the snail is just always trying to like take the shortest path, just can almost reach. Ah, he left again. Just sleep in a circle of salt and you win. Emokius, remember the snail is also immortal. So it'll just go, ow! And just walk through it. Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate that. I think regarding that one, HK, I think some of the reasons why people think think bigger in regards to that whole hypothesis is if you're immortal and the snail is immortal, then you're both going to live forever, basically, is the idea anyway. So if you have NASA shoot the snail out into the universe, and remember the snail knows where you are and will always make its way closer and closer to you, in 5,000 years, when you're a part of this space council somewhere, you just randomly like see like out in the distance, what's that? Oh, someone does, because the snail isn't that big. Like someone's like, what is that, a snail? It shouldn't be able to breathe here or like live or exist here. How? And the snail just slowly makes its way. And for you, it's been like 5,000 years. You've completely forgotten that the snail was actually the reason why you were immortal in the first place. And ultimately, you just randomly die from the snail just casually strolling up to you because you had completely forgotten. Like, actually, maybe the winning strategy for the snail is to just do nothing for a few hundred years. Just wait. Just hide. And then when you've forgotten about it, it'll just strike when you least expect it. I don't know, HK. What I'm saying is, if the snail flies endlessly in any direction, it will eventually probably land on a planet, right? Eventually. And it might eventually make its way onto a ship or something that progresses it towards you. We don't know how clever the snail is. See, this is the thing. That's the thing that gets really weird about this hypothesis, is because what assumptions are we making about the snail's intelligence while we're at it, right? Lauren says, I need to get the skink minion. I believe that one is from the first variant dungeon. I'm pretty sure. Proceeds to hitchhike on a comet that destroys Earth, theoretically also killing you. Well, the thing... Oh yeah, I mean... if the snail happens to land on you by sheer happenstance, then... The alternative with the skink is I believe you can also trade it, but it might be really expensive given that no one really has had any reason to do that variant dungeon for a while now. Like, aside from being late to the party or something to that effect. The says, it also matters what counts as the snail touching me. That's true. That is actually a really good point. Because if it has to touch your skin, then you could just, you know, make a habit of wearing really thick and entirely enclosed clothing. And a helmet. Like, what's with this guy who's always wearing, like, a knight's armor? With, like, a glass visor. Running around in a hazard suit. Yeah, exactly. Just, well, I mean, I'm immortal, so even if I'm not feeling super well in here, I'm not going to die from it, so it'll probably be fine. I think there's also some people that post like things like, oh yeah, good for you, you're immortal. What are you going to do if the Earth explodes, like is destroyed, or wherever you happen to be, because you might not even be on Earth, gets destroyed? Then you're just immortal in space. Oh, it says, I remember killing you when we farmed Gwibber during Hades' fight. Felt so bad afterwards. Me? Like, you killed me? Or did you mean someone else? Or did you mean something else? Oh. Oh, that. I hope that hasn't stayed stuck on your mind. I'm pretty sure I got killed by that like a few times in the time frame where we farmed Hades for the Gwibber mount. And that just happened sometimes, that people would like mess up and then I would die from a laser beam or something. Like, I don't even remember who did or who didn't hit me with one. So I hope that hasn't stuck on your mind and you still feel bad about it. Yeah, the thing is, if you see it coming, you can just use an invuln and you might be fine. I just didn't do that. I think part of the argument was that there was no reason to if we did the thing right, but in retrospect, we could have just used an invuln. Second boss. I don't know what I'm going to do about the time where it turns you into things. I believe that I'll just have to hope and pray that you don't just wipe if you don't do it perfectly. And then just try to enter that phase with as much HP as possible. There's also this. I don't think I can kill all of them. I killed one. I killed two of them. How much damage is that? Oh. No, that's nothing. That's also true. The idols don't move anymore. Don't worry about me, old one. I'm just having an entire baked eggplant in the middle of our fight. Don't worry about it. You thought you were fighting the Warrior of Light. You're actually fighting Link from Breath of the Wild. In other news, this boss hits really hard with its auto attacks. Ow. Very quite hard. Speedrunner strats. There you go. I did this fight a lot. I believe this dungeon was current when I got to max level the first time. I think I mentioned that I didn't realize that it was supposed to like buy crafted gear and stuff to gear up. So I had like Scala gear for basically all jobs I played, which of course meant that I had to do this dungeon many times. It's also not the worst gear to just have. It looks very nice. Mystic Flame. Hey, you got a house, Lawrence. Congratulations. No! In the middle of my inner release even. I was using that. Okay, I got all but one. I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. All except one. Yeah, every single time I've even bothered to bet on a house in Final Fantasy XIV, it has been in some context where I've had like an inflated, increased chance of winning. Like the first time I bought a house in Final Fantasy XIV was back in Stormblood. The house right next to my free company at the time was open, and basically we were just like people in the free company chat were just discussing who should buy it. So I just went over and bought it. Unfortunately, I bought it a few weeks or something before I quit the game. So when I came back to the game, I didn't have a house anymore. I just was poorer. The second time I bought a house was in Shadowbringers, when they increased the amount of wards. My free company moved into a goblet ward. And I just bought the house next to my free company. And the reason why that works so easily is because Goblet is, to my knowledge, the least wanted housing district in Final Fantasy XIV. Like, the least players are interested in it, so we just kind of went and grabbed it. And then the third time I went for a house was when my free company was trying to get a house, I believe. We got our Ishgardian house because we bet on a medium house, while all the other FCs were betting on large houses. And then the fourth time I went for a house was the large house I have now. I basically figured out every single large house available, like every single plot, when they opened more wards. I just like noted every single one and then figured out like which ones were in my price range, because I didn't have the money to buy the most expensive of them. And then I figured out which specific plot among those that I could afford had the least competition. And I found like an hour before the lottery happened, I bet on a house with only one other person bidding. Now, the really, really unfortunate part is that I discovered that the person that I was bidding against happened to, like, I don't know if they watched the channel now, but I know that they watched my video on how to get a house in Final Fantasy XIV because they brought that up. So of all people... So at least if it's nothing else, if it's nothing else, at least I'm still using the house and I haven't moved since, right? That must count for something. Yeah, the thing is, ultimately, I didn't choose that house to target anyone in particular. I just I maximized my chances of winning by specifically targeting the house with the least competition. And it didn't matter that much to me whether it was in Lavender Beds or the Goblet or whatever. I just wanted a large house. These pools are a little meh when you have to do them one at a time, but hey, that gets made up for by the final pull being absolutely insane, at least as I recall. There's the weird long boys that always hit like freight trains whenever they appear in dungeons, and sometimes they cleave like they do in this dungeon. But yeah, it was quite unfortunate. Like, I got the house, I got there placed, like, moved in, and, like, were just hanging out outside as the other person who, like, had bid on the house came over and was like... It was a 50% chance! Like, a 50%, he's right. There was a 50% chance. Not much you can do about it. But yeah, so in conclusion, if you want a house in Final Fantasy XIV, the best time to look for one is when they open more wards, because then there's way more housing. If you just want a house and you don't care about the size of it, you just want a house, then when new wards open, make the conscious decision to bid on a small house. Because no one else is going to do that. When there's so many mediums and large houses, basically the only ones you're competing against to the small house are the other people that can't afford anything bigger. So if you just choose like a small house that doesn't have a lot of competition yet, like even better if you find a small house with very little competition, like on the day of the lottery. Like, there's a little bit more strategy to it than that, because some people will simply not bid on a house if there's already someone bidding. So if you know you want a specific house, then as soon as you can, bid on the one of that, like, in the ward where there's the least competition when you get to it, you bid on that one. Bid as soon as possible. Like, if it has to be a specific location, then there's no reason to wait. The sooner you do it, the more likely you're able to, like, scare away other competition. If you do care about the size, then you have to choose either between, like, figuring out where the where the least wanted large is, or alternatively settle for a medium. Because in the first week, most people that want a big house will all be competing for the large houses. So there's going to be nearly no one bidding for the mediums. That's how my free company got a medium. Like, we moved to Ishgard in the week where Ishgard opened. Like, we weren't the first opening of Ishgard because we settled for a medium. Whereas everyone else who were bidding wanted a large, right? I'm sure some of them were moving from a large in a different ward, so they, you know, they didn't want to downsize, which makes sense. But given that my free company was moving from a small, it was like anything would be an upgrade. Goddammit, this the FC I'm part of lost a 50-50 against the lottery glitch. Oh yeah, right at the start where it would sometimes just give the win to 0, right? There's actually a funny story with that. My free company, when we were finding a house, we chose one that was right next to the market board. But after 3 of us had already thrown in bids, because you can increase your odds of winning by having multiple free company members bid all at once, but you all can only bid on one thing. Like, so if you're bidding on an FC house, you can't bid on a house for yourself, for example. When we had already all the leadership had already bid on it, someone in the leadership was like, I'd actually rather want the house right next to this one, which has like a snow pile. I'll pay for it, don't worry. But we need someone to like do the bid, because everyone else who could isn't can't anymore. And the funny thing is, we won both of the houses, so we could ultimately just choose which one we wanted to move into. Normally, the rule would be that the house that we didn't take, we wouldn't get a full refund for, because we won it. But for some reason, that weird 0 glitch led to us both winning both houses and also being able to get a full refund for the house we didn't want, which was quite funny. The long boys. The long boys. Yeah, that's also strategy, Zach. The reason why I kind of alluded to that, you know, bid as late as possible, find one there's no competition for, then you're sure you'll win that one. The reason why I added more nuance to that is because, on the other hand, some players will not bid on a house if someone already did. Like, think about it. If I bid on a house, then that strategy will avoid that house. So I can already, like, weed out a lot of competition by bidding early. On the contrary, there's also some people that also want the house that'll bid anyway. So that's why, like, it's difficult. If I had bid on the house that I wanted earlier, there's a pretty good chance that the person that I was competing with wouldn't have bid on it. If they were aiming for a best chance scenario. Maybe they had settled for something else, right? But they didn't. And instead I came along and was like, well, this is the best option, and just went for that one. So it's complicated. But it is a good tip. By the way, fun fact, you can sidestep this attack. It's a frontal cone. It's not a tank buster. Fun fact, you can sidestep this attack. It's not targeted. It's a circle. It's a cone AoE behind him. I see a lot of people get hit by those. Both of them. Also, change to this boss. He specifically walks to the center of the room before he does the proximity AoE. I don't think he used to do that. No reason to greet that. Oh, that's super free. I don't even have to do anything. Oh, a cross AoE. Better dodge your friends with that. My what? Oh, I should have dodged that, though. The laser beam you can also sidestep. But, you know, it's easier to do it if you're actually looking at what the boss is doing. Just assume that I intentionally got hit to demonstrate that if you don't move, you'll get hit. Yes. Yes, that's what happened. Exactly, did you know? You can sidestep the laser since it's just a frontal line AoE, exactly. This is what it looks like when you don't do that. I'm pretty glad that they didn't add telegraphs to all those attacks, because this boss would be pretty tame if it didn't have that at the very least. Like, most of the difficulty of this fight is from those, like, small things. Which we can also see demonstrated in the fact that this boss's auto attacks deal like half the damage of the previous boss. Quite weird. I wonder how they decide that. Also, I feel like he's taking a really long time to use like his laser beam again. Is that like HP specific? Strange. Look! It's the laser beam thing. You can just sidestep it. Incredible. Just one? Okay. It's always weird when the most difficult boss in a dungeon, like, more often than not, it seems like it's often the second boss that is the hardest one. Like, when we do these solo challenges, the way that it often works is if there is a difficult boss, it's almost always the second one. And if the final boss is difficult, it's like, it's so much more difficult than the second boss that it's borderline not even possible. Like, at all. At least, like, based on the observations we've had on these streams. It isn't always consistent. There's always exceptions, like Aurum Vale, where the hardest boss is the first boss. Assuming you don't... I think there's like a cheese strat you can use, where you can stand somewhere where Locksmith can't reach you. Something like that. I think this boss doesn't have very many mechanics. Feels like he's just... He's trying his best. He's like... He's really trying. Like, just throwing all of his mechanics out. But it doesn't do very much. Oh, absolutely, Amokus. This fight gets a lot more hectic if you have 4 players. Some of the scariest stuff that can happen in this boss fight is if your players are not respecting the glare mechanic, the gaze. Because you don't just get stunned or something when you look at the eye. You get confused, and when you're confused, you will just auto path over to to someone in your party and start auto attacking them. Which isn't particularly threatening if it's like a black mage that gets confused. But if it's like a monk or even your tank, then it starts to get really scary. Like, you as a healer might have to, like, react to that and respond to that, because it's going to push out so much damage that you really need to respect it. Just with their auto attacks. So that one, the cross and the and the donut thing, those combined can get really confusing, and it doesn't help when you have party members that, like, I have multiple times had, like, runs where I usually warn people when I get this fight. Like, I don't explain how the fight works. I just say, be aware that the boss doesn't, like, have attacks without telegraphs. You have to look at the boss. And sometimes they'll just say nothing. Sometimes the players will say, okay. And then they'll get hit by the tail. And it gets even worse when they repeatedly get hit by the tail. Especially if you're the healer. Because you just kind of have to deal with it. We're almost there. It is very strange how much easier these fights have been today than like Alamigo and Castromabania. And a fell cleave to finish. 46 minutes. It's pretty good. Nice. Let's see. Oh, right. Hell's Lit. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really weird how that happens. It isn't, like, always like that. I think it's more that we more easily notice that the leveling dungeons are harder. Because they have, like, varying reasons why they're harder. Like, typically, this section of dungeons feel like they're often harder because there's, like, sometimes, like, an item level thing, which is really weird. Weirdly, like, on top of that, these dungeons, like, just like the level ranges, right? Like X1, X2, 3, X5, and so on. Like, these ones, weirdly, doesn't feel like the item level tends to be the problem as often, even though those should actually be where the item level problem becomes more prominent, because the people that are using Poetics gear will start to be quote-unquote under-geared, because by bottom's metal you start to find better gear. But I think the reason for that is that most of the people that you'll see here, a lot of them at least, will be using, like, you know, MSQ handouts or crafted gear. And if that's the case, that's less than Poetics gear. And if they are using MSQ handouts or crafted gear that they'll, you know, supply themselves with, by the time they get to this, it's very, very possible that they already have stuff from Bottom's Metal or Shisui of the Violet Tides, or they have MSQ handouts that'll keep them, you know, up to date. So the item level problem isn't as bad. But then the bosses are just hard in their own right. I still think it's really funny that the second boss in Castromabania, like, it's a perfect example of a mean mechanic. I've talked about this before. A mechanic where you probably won't get it the first time you see it. And it's like, you succeeding that fight hinges on whether you do or don't get it. Like, if you don't get it, you're not gonna win. If you do get it, it's really easy. Then they reworked the fight. Now I can't speak on it because I've basically only done the fight solo. Steve says, a question when I think about it. When you run a dungeon with a what? With a trat? And get 100 credits, do you get that every time or only with trust? Like you mean like running Packle and then getting 100 credits? That should be every single time. The reason why it gives you 100 credits is because the dungeon itself gives 100 credits, like it's part of the reward. And that's every time you do it. Every time. So that should also apply when you're doing it with a duty support. It will of course take longer, unless of course the queue is incredibly long. Right, I'll be right back and then we do Hell's Lid. Alright, I'm back. The Watcher, we meet again. VX says, one thing to consider in trusts and duty support is that you don't have to roll on loot. You just get everything. But I think there's less loot in total. I believe every chest gives you just one thing, whereas normally you get like one or two. Like, I say one or two because I think it sometimes varies. Sometimes it's two. Often it's two, but not all chests give two to my knowledge. But if you're in trust, it's all, well, duty support, then it's always one, if I remember correctly. Like, it's not bad. I'm just saying, if you're there for poetics, specifically poetics, then it's probably better to like try and queue for stuff with less time where you're sitting in queue and where you spend less time in there. But poetics farming is really weird, like just in general. The weirdest strategy that I ever heard for farming poetics that a friend used when he got back into the game. He made a new character on Louis Soir to play with me. He got to level 50 and wanted full Ironworks Magitech. the way he went about that is he would queue for Afar Amphitheater, you know, Shiva, repeatedly. I don't recall if he was like queuing for multiple dungeons, but I specifically recall that he did this one a ridiculous amount of times. Now, you see those 15 and think, that's really, really dumb. But you know how when you enter a dungeon or a trial or a raid or something where there's a first timer, there's like this little prompt where it's like there's a first timer, or there's at least one first timer in your group. You will get an additional reward for like quick completion, basically. Like that reward on that fight, I believe it includes an additional 80 poetics or something ridiculous like that. Don't remember the number exactly, but if you can do this fight and get a first timer in it, you get like 95 poetics in total instead of 15, and you can do this fight in like 5 minutes, maybe 10. So he just spammed this, and because there was an influx of a lot of new players at that time for some reason, most of the time there would be a first timer in his group somehow. Really, really like the weirdest poetic farming strategy I've ever heard about. I wouldn't do it myself because it's like, it's a risk. If you don't get a first timer, that's 15 poetics. And I don't know what the probability of landing a group with a first timer is. I don't know what the probability of that is. If the chance is 50%, hypothetically, if it was 50%, then this would be pretty good odds. But if it's like 20%, then you would have to run this 5 times to get that extra 80. So, like, if that's what you're dealing with, then maybe do something that consistently awards more. Unequip says, I found my poetics for Heavensward relics doing adventure and need for trials. Almost always there is a first timer. That is also a very good strategy. Just queue as a healer when it's healer in need. Just switch to tank if it's tank in need. That is actually a pretty good strategy, because a lot of the trials that would need something would be first timers. That's actually a really good tip on Kupo. Very, very good tip. And then you also just get, you know, this for free, at least the first time every day, and then you just get like an extra 4,000 money. Just do mental roulette. You know, I'll get to Hell's Lit in a moment. Don't worry, I'm not just running the timer or something. We're doing that dungeon as well today. We'll try, at least. I've discovered that if you, like, I've done a bunch of mental roulettes, right? Or a bunch. I've done like 3 in the past month or so, maybe a bit more a month. But all 3 of them has just been a normal dungeon. Just a normal dungeon. And the thing that those 3 runs all have in common is that I queued as a healer. And I heard from others that there's a much, much larger chance, like much greater chance, that you're going to land in all of those, like, doomsday scenarios of getting, like, an extreme where the group can't clear it, or an extreme that isn't likely to be cleared at all, you know, just an extreme encounter that is not going to be beaten if you queue Mentor as DPS. And the thing is, I think the only time, like, I've gotten Rathalos Extreme and Sephiroth Extreme. And in both cases, I'm pretty sure I queued as healer. But I'm pretty sure in both cases I queued out of, like the normal playing hours. So, like, I was queuing at a time where there was clearly less stuff happening. So there's a better chance that some guy was doing Rathalos Extreme, for example. There's also the part that Rathalos Extreme isn't that hard if everyone respects the fight. Then it's pretty fine. Like, if you've done it, then you can figure out how to do it again as a mentor in that situation. And if the sprouts in the group just has done like minimal research and understand like the basics of the fight, then you can probably do it. I think, Steve, there, it depends. It ultimately depends on how bad your gear at level 50 is. Like, if your item level is 70 at level 50, then I would say it's going to be really, really hard to do something like Dusk Vigil. So, like, it depends on how bad your gear is. Like, if you have decent gear already, then there's no point also spending Poetics, right? With that Trials tip was really good on Kupo. I had actually not really considered that, but, like, that plays on the same reasoning as the Shiva trick. The difference is that instead of, like, queuing for something specific, hoping to get the easy way out, you queue for something where the chance is much higher that you get the good stuff. Right, now we're in Hell's Lit. Some of you might never have done this dungeon before. And if you haven't, the reason would be that this dungeon is entirely optional and very, very missable if you have never tried to farm mounts in Stormblock. Yeah, you also get extra free gil if you do it as Adventure in Need. Yeah, exactly, we will do it very soon with Smolkai, that is true. Yeah, this is optional content. It is quite funny. This reminds me of Matoya's Relict in Shadowbringers. When you get to the lava pit part where it's just rainbow lava, it looks like. I think some people were like saying, "Oh yeah, that looks like Hell's Lit when you're on something." Were you just about to mention Matoya's Relic, Lemon? This is a little awkward. I don't think I can hit more than one of them at a time. Like, maybe two of them, but that's just not worth it. So hopefully I can kill them before they overwhelm me. And yeah, speaking of soloing content, I have, like, specifically with the Four Lords, which is what this is related to, I have soloed at least Suzaku and, what's his name from Jade Stower, the Tiger Man. Byakko, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, you have to do those unsynced, of course, if you're doing them on extreme. But you can, and you have been able to for quite a while. Yeah, if you're here for the triple triad card, there's absolutely no reason to do it in any other way but unsynced, Viek. Unless... I have never looked into this. I'm pretty sure that it has no impact. I'm pretty sure you can indeed get triple triad cards while doing it unsynced, right? I can't imagine there would be a reason why you wouldn't. But it wouldn't surprise me that there would be, like, randomly some sort of stipulation. Oh no, you can't do that. This is scary because I don't know where safe to be in between my bursts. Although, the mobs aren't that strong. Weird. Like, they hurt, but not that much. You have gotten them from unsync clears before, okay. It's just more to say that we can never know for sure. It would be super random. It was just like, oh yeah, but specifically Hell's Lit, you can't. But it wouldn't have been the most outlandish thing I've heard people claim. Why is the lion over there? Just casting something so that I dodge your AoE cleave. Bye bye. Don't mind me. I'll just be over here dodging your AoEs. Don't even worry about it. Boonk. 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 But how did the lion die so early? I thought that would be like the last man standing. Like aside from Captain Wall over here, that is so big that we can't even tip the camera correctly to see it. We're almost there. It's not as soon we can get to the rest of the dungeon. Oh, right, there's a boss. Volcano Fall Guys. I like the idea of everything being like, oh, you just have to dodge a bunch of stuff repeatedly. Has just become like, oh, that's a Fall Guys mechanic. Oh, 100-ton swing. You sense something ominous above. What's that? It's rocks. Are rocks ominous? Question for the chat. Are rocks ominous? Yes, no. Oh yeah, this... Isn't this a Realm Reborn dungeon boss music? That's actually a good point. But that isn't uncommon. I feel like back, like early Shadowbringers, all of the like middle bosses in a dungeon just had like generic boss music, and then later they made like a remix of the final boss theme. And because it was so well received, they did it again for Endwalker. Heh, spooky rocks. Spooky rocks. Why do I not have Onslaught? Did I spend it for damage? I guess I did. Spooky rocks. Exactly, Lemon. Kind of weird. Why would they appear right here? Like, it's not that surprising. Kind of weird that they're suddenly raining, but it's not that ominous. We are in a volcano. But I think Amokius might have it with maybe it's just because it's bad luck. Surprisingly unlucky that we have rocks falling specifically while we're fighting this guy. How about some more ominous rocks? I was lucky he didn't jump for the weapon first. don't know if I didn't pay attention enough to realize whether he does it in a certain order, but I absolutely wasn't paying attention to the weapons on the ground. Like, he would have gotten the freest hit on me right there. Grarg! Grarg! Otakemaru, what do you think the god of the destroyer god should be named? Grarg! Ah, Ralger! Yes, I agree. That sounds good. Let's go with that one. That's canon now. The true namer of Ralger is this random thing in the dungeon. Oh, exactly 3,000. Nice. Yeah, that could be just that it is like bad luck, it's a demon. According to lore, this demon is capable of making it rain fire to cloud or cover. Uh-oh. The mountain it resides on. Guess the attack makes a lot more sense then. I guess. Well, let me put it like this. Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy as a whole uses a lot of real-life references, like for things, just in general. And the Four Lords is incredibly like either Japanese or just Asia, like yokai themed. So it makes perfect sense that they would have some like a demon from Japanese folklore. Like for example, I read earlier today that Kamaitachi means sickle weasel, and Kamaitachi is a yokai related to like slicing winds. The boss we're walking up to right now is a weasel who uses wind, so it's basically that, right? It's basically that. I don't know if it actually is named Kamaitachi. The reason why I noticed that particular detail is because I was reading on Phantom Kamaitachi, you know, the ninja action. Coincidence? I think not. Indeed. Yeah, there's so many references. There's also like a lot of Heavensward stuff is like Norse mythology and things like that. A lot of dragons have names based on Old Norse. Like, I read about Nastrand, you know, Nastrand. And apparently that's, like, if you read on that, you'll find the name Nidhogg also appears. You know, no, totally not Nidhogg. I don't know what you're talking about. They're totally not related, but yeah. Like, that's just another random example. Like, that's just some Old Norse stuff that happens to be correlated, and they happen to be, like, Dragoon and a dragon name. Thank you, James. Also, I do believe Zach also said Happy Thanksgiving. So, I should say that. Thank you, and Happy Thanksgiving to you and to everyone else. I hope you have had or have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm in a country that doesn't celebrate that, of course, so easy for me to completely forget. But I still do hope people have a wonderful, wonderful time with these holidays. Yeah, Nostrand. Corpse Shore. Grr. It's not so surprising because like I don't know about the corpse part, but strand means like beach in Danish. So like it just sounds like a slightly weird way of saying beach, or you know, strand. So like it's close enough that I'm like, yeah, go. Yeah, thank you, James. I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, right, that one, Amokius. The boy and the dragon gay. Well, you have to remember that gay also means happy, right? I think it's happy. But it is quite funny and very eye-catching, right? Very effective. Something in this pack is hitting like an actual freight train, and I don't know what it is, but it's not funny. It's very painful is what it is. Hey Ryan, hope you're doing well. Geishkagul is like a Valkyrie in Old Norse. Like a specific Valkyrie, by the way. It is a little funny that there's like so many jobs in Final Fantasy XIV that has like at least like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 like really weird actions with like super weird obscure references as their names. And then there's some jobs like Warrior where you just you don't like I think the most obscure name, like action name Warrior has is Orogeny. That's like geology stuff. It's like, it's related to like tectonic plates, like pushing against each other or something like that. That's the weirdest action name Warrior has. Meanwhile, you have Dragoon with like, yeah, Nostrand and Geishkagul. And, well, then you have, I think Ninja has 3 actions that reference specific yokai and like gods and stuff. Oh, weird. I was sitting here like, wait, have we even fought the first boss yet? Because for some reason I had managed to convince myself that the first boss was the Weasel. Like, well, we've spent 20 minutes here and not fought a boss. That's weird. And then I remembered. And we just fought the demon guy. That's why we're talking about all this, remember? Also, that is a very unfortunate translation, Amokius. The Red Mage Rapier combos are common fencing terms. basically most of their physical attacks are fencing terms. I think the funniest one I discovered is contre 6. That pretty much means like counter number 6. Or parry number 6. If you look up, if you look for it a little bit, you'll find a list of counters or parries in fencing, and contre 6 is one of them. It's number 6 on the list. And no, it does not involve like manifesting like crystal spikes and throwing it at them at your opponents. Although that would have been really cool if it were. And the magic is actually, it's interesting, but a little less exciting than you'd expect, because it's the is allegedly shorthand for vermilion, which is a red color. So it's just a really fancy way of saying red thunder and red fire. It is neat. It makes it sound like it's a lot deeper than it is. I don't know if it is. Also, by the way, it is named Kamaitachi. Wasn't there because it has something to do with Japanese? I don't know, but ver being a shorthand for vermilion makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That's what I could find on the subject at the very least. If we can find out, maybe Orion knows. Do you know what the red mage spells are called in the Japanese? Oh, Mokius, you mean like how they didn't want Glarera and Holira, so they skipped those. Are you already finished with your intermission? I haven't killed the ads yet, boy. Bruh. Hey, Emir. Yeah, I would say I'm winning. I don't know, I feel like Ladera sounds pretty cool. Gradera. How did Temple of the Fist go? It was surprisingly manageable. I think, well, the third boss was a little difficult, but the trash packs were certainly the harder part. Most of the dungeon was quite manageable. We also did the Drowned City of Scala, which was similarly very manageable. Yeah, Lemon, one way you can find out what the spells are named in Japanese, if you're not sure where to find like a list, is just go on the official website, like the official like job guides on Final Fantasy XIV's website, and then switch the language to Japanese. Then you'll at the very least get like the kanji, if that's what they went with. Let's see, Orion says it's Varusanda, like the thunder. So that to me sounds like they chose the English name and then translated that to Japanese, which sometimes happens. Yeah, Varusanda is basically, they just They just said, oh, well, it's called the Thunder in English. Right. We'll go with that then. Right? And if that's true, then it's more likely that whatever reason we can come up with that makes sense for why the English names are what they are is more likely to match. That is also true if they're using katakana. Then it sounds very much like that's what happened. I don't know, Varosanda sounds very cool. Barero. And that's what really matters, right? If the attack sounds cool. Like, I don't know why people are complaining about all those weird samurai actions. I don't need to understand what Midare Setsugeka means. Because it sounds cool, right? It is funny. I also read that you see, there is literally not a single kanji in sight for red mage abilities and spells. Oh. They just are you telling me that the way red mage worked is that they just went English, you figure that out. Maybe talk a little bit with French. I don't know. Can we copy your homework? Red Mage Limit Break 3 is also named Vermilion Scourge. That's also very true, and that would also, like, pay extra value or, like, a credence to the fact that all of those their spells are probably implying that that's what they mean. I feel like I've been here before, like, weirdly recently. Have I soloed this dungeon on stream before? Have I done that? Suerukuhao. What is that? Is that Swearcow? Is that Swearcow, Orion? Huh? I think I nailed that. I'm pretty sure I nailed that one. Nice. Wow. Yikes, and I thought it was difficult to read in English. Or German, even. That's also true, Lemon. I think it's very interesting that often they have like Japanese is extremely good with shorthands for stuff, and they're very creative with their shorthands for stuff as well. Which of course goes hand in hand with the fact I've been told that Japanese people love puns. I've heard. I've been told. Of course, that doesn't mean everyone. It's not like a hive mind, but I've heard that puns are popular there. Puns are great. I also love me some puns. You want to hear one in Japanese? I mean, if you can write it like in in not katakana, for example, or hiragana or kanji, like so that we all can read them, then it might be easier for everyone to follow along. But I would like to hear one. Like I can sit down and figure out kanji or katakana and hiragana like decently well, but it takes a while sometimes, especially if I'm in the middle of surviving a boss fight or a big trash bag. Which is the flattest prefecture? I don't know. I don't know. The best I have as an answer to that one is like a self-deprecating humor, which our Danes are very good at. Denmark, if we qualify as a prefecture, because Denmark is known to be exceptionally flat. Yamanashi. Meaning a non-existing mountain? Is that right? Or something that a prefecture that doesn't have mountains? I greeted a little bit too hard. I greeted a little bit too hard. No mountains. These wormy boys hit really hard. Adele says, I found an interview of Koji Fox confirming that VER stands for Vermilion. For Gamer Escape. Oh, okay. Excellent. Thank you. Does Yamanashi not actually not have mountains? Is Yamanashi a prefecture? I don't know. It has some of the highest in Japan, including Mount Fuji. That is quite ironic. That it's called Yamanashi then. That is very ironic. It's a little bit like Greenland. A place just filled with snow and ice. Oh man, an earring! This is an awkward pack. Like exactly 2 mods? It's just low enough that it's awkward to do AoE. I'll use AoE for my Storm's Eye, I think. Spark? What's that? Don't care, you're stunned now. It is a good joke. A very good pun. Crosswind. What's that? Oh. That was incredibly underwhelming. Of course it was just a random party-wide AoE. I don't know what I expected. So on our Turtley boy coming up, I will probably have to like hold back a lot because I'm pretty sure he has a DPS check. Pretty sure. The Chelonian Gate thing. Mokius says, saw a Reddit post about someone asking how to heal a Dark Knight since they felt like they were almost impossible to keep alive. Saw someone respond, cast less glare. I mean, Technically not wrong. Although, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that the person realized that, but that the problem was specifically, of course, that how do I heal them without, like, GCDs? But that is pretty funny. Yeah, that is also true. Orion and Gasol are both very, very good on the Japanese language. They're both on the Discord server. I only know, like, really basic stuff because I just spend a little bit of time, like very little time on it, like every day with like Duolingo or something like that. And then like do it as a little bit on the side because I think it's interesting. Like, I don't really understand Japanese, but I understand it enough that if I sit down with like a translation tool, I can probably figure out if something is mostly right or entirely wrong. Mokia says, feels like that'd be more the issue of the Dark Knight poorly mitigating. It's complicated. It is complicated because the reason why a lot of healers are having a hard time healing Dark Knights is because everyone's used to healing warriors. And warriors are like the polar opposite of Dark Knight in terms of like self-sustainability. Gunbreaker and Paladin at max level are like somewhere in between, but warrior is like just godlike levels, whereas Dark Knight is like normal mortal levels of self-healing, and then Gunbreaker and Paladin are somewhere in between, but they're not even close to warrior. Like, so if you're used to healing warriors, Gunbreakers and Paladins will feel like a bad warrior, whereas a Dark Knight will feel not like a warrior, right? At the closest comparison is a warrior who isn't using Bloodwetting or Raw Intuition, which is a terrible warrior. In the Reddit post, it was about an undergeared Dark Knight. Ah, well, that also explains some things. I mean, Red Birdie, Dark Knight does heal a bit from their 1-2-3 combo. People tend to just overlook that because all tanks kind of have that. The reason why it does matter is because the way that Paladin's self-sustain works is that they don't heal on their 1-3 combos normally. So they can, like, stockpile bursts of healing with Requiescat. It's always scary to drop down low with a boss that has, like, no warning tank busters. Paladin also has the Holy Sheltron thing, that's right. It was more to say that Dark Knight has healing on their 1-3 combo and Paladin does not. That was more what I was implying. So it's important to keep in mind these things because it does matter. It's simply that because all the other tanks have more stuff that heals them and Dark Knight kinda doesn't, it puts it at a massive disadvantage, and there's just not very much you can do about that. Speaking of not very much you can do about that, it is very possible that this is something that I can't do. There's also a possibility that it isn't a one-shot. It's not a one-shot. Okay then, well then let's continue the fight. You better not do that again. I still had a little bit more up my sleeve. I could have entered that with like a full minute of Storm's Eye, so I maybe wouldn't have had to like refresh it in the middle of it. I could have entered it with full Infuriates and full Beast Gauge, and like full inner release at the ready and everything. But if it isn't a one-shot, it did like 21,000 while I had Vengeance up. Like Vengeance and Holmgang and Rampart, I think. So I'm pretty sure I could live it with whatever else I have if he does it again. And because that intermission is like a minute long, like I have a lot of time to figure out what I'm going to do about it if he does it again, hypothetically. But it didn't look like something he might do again. It didn't feel like something he would do again. But maybe Genbu doesn't care about what I feel or want in life. Oh, he's finishing where I am right now. Yeah, if it doesn't kill me, then I already know that there's no possibility that I beat it, like, very easily. So that it's much more time efficient for me to just go full blast and kill him early, if at all possible, instead of trying to make the magic happen. You'd think you'd have a friend in a Sagely Turtle, I know, right? Weird. Also, aren't all the 4 lords, like, extremely old? Like, just while we're on the subject, aren't all the 4 lords supposed to be incredibly old? So how old is the turtle when he's the only one who's grown a beard? Like a really big white beard, to my knowledge. And he's acting like he's actually old. Yeah, exactly, they're ancient. So how ancient do you have to be to actually, like, become old man? How would you tell if a tiger has a beard? How would you expect a beard would look on a turtle? But you make a fair point. The tiger's already white, so it might be more easy to hide the fact that he's white, like a white beard. But I just don't feel like he has like the same oldness to him that Genbu has. Yeah. I was really concerned about that Chelonian Gate. I couldn't remember if it had like that whole DPS check over it, but the fact that it doesn't kill you is surprising. That's a good point, Orion. Maybe he wasn't white originally. I'm pretty sure there's a flashback where you see him like long ago, and he's also white there, but it would be incredibly funny if that was the story there. Oh no, he wasn't white, but he is now. He's just really old. The only reason Suzaku is totally normal is because it's a phoenix. Oh yeah, I've died and reincarnated hundreds of times to make sure I stay this young looking. Well, that was a pretty nice demonstration, and the reason why when I see like a DPS check mechanic, why I always like do the kitchen sink thing just in case. Like, just in case it works. Because here it worked. You forgot the snake? Well, isn't he white as well? Byaku's written white tiger. Oh. Fair enough. Wait, is his name White Tiger? Yep. Good day. Hello. My name is Blonde Guy. That's what they call me. Ariel says, my headcanon is that Genbu was turned into an auspice when he was already an old turtle, while the other ones were younger animals. That could also be the case. That reminds me of, like, the thinking, isn't your name Blade? Ah, of course. Hello, thank you for inviting me to this interview today. Yes, my name is Blade. Bladerson. Yes. Golbis. That's my middle name. That's what my friends call me, but my actual name is Blade. Seiryu is Blue Dragon. That's a weird letdown, isn't it? He's not even blue. Or a dragon. Bladerson, son of Blade. Exactly. That is an interesting thing, Aradel. When you see like spirits in like anime or like movies or something, like usually the spirit you see is like the last they looked like. So it's like, oh, well, he died when in his later years, so he's like an old man. Like if you die old with like a bad back and everything, then you then have to deal with that in the afterlife, doesn't that kind of suck when you think about it? Wouldn't it have been better if you didn't have to I'm just saying, that's not a very good selling point, is it? Suzaku is scarlet or red tree sparrow. That is underestimating. So what we have is we have white tiger, who's basically a white tiger. We have blue dragon, which is like a white, grayish snake. Not a tiger and not blue, unless it's like a very, very weak blue, so it looks gray. And then we have the red tree sparrow, who's straight up a phoenix. Like you could see who was like compensating for something and who was fine with what they had, right? Sounds like some king knockoff. Blue dragon. Japanese dragons are more snake-like. Yeah, I think so. But in this particular case, Seiryu is straight up a snake. Yes, I believe like Japanese dragons, I guess almost like just dragons like from Asia, are typically like snake-like serpentine in a way, but they're not snakes. Like they have a lot more to them. In fact, they usually still have arms, like smaller arms. But they have them. Meanwhile, Seiryu over here, like, yes, I am a dragon. That's me. Ryan says, Genbu is black soldier. Combined, it's also just black tortoise. As the mythical creature, not an actual animal. Right. Wait, so Genbu is like a specific mythical creature. Is that right? Also, on that subject, what's with the Kamaitachi? The weasel that we fight earlier in that dungeon, is that not one of the lords? It's just like a yokai creature, but it's not one of the 4 lords then, I guess. It's a weasel that can turn into like an actual flying serpent weasel and cast wind magic. It's not one of the 4 lords. It's not the 5 lords, you see. We're 4 lords. You don't count. You came in late that day when they were giving out the title, so you missed your chance. Sorry. Guess you'll just have to be Kamaitachi, which means sickle weasel, I believe. The 4 lords are all from Chinese mythology, while Kamaitachi is just one of the many yokai in Japanese mythology. Yeah, exactly. And it's also a ninja action. Well, it's a phantom version. But weirdly, you don't summon a weasel with sickles when you do that. You just summon a ghost of yourself. I do think it's quite funny that Kamaitachi sounds really cool, but it's actually sickle and weasel, and then when you combine them, then you get this yokai. Gokamekyaku. That's pretty good as well. Oh, right. Yeah, Ymir posted the 4 lord symbols, presumably. Well, the symbols that are related to the 4 lords in that case. Although they're not necessarily called 4 lords. It seems like there's a bunch of other names for them. You know, there's a lot of job icons that are really interesting. There's also a lot of them where you look at them and go, wow, that's incredible. And then when you actually look at it, you realize that it's not that impressive. Like, let me give you a really cool example. Take a look at expiación here, which is Spanish, by the way. And it means atonement. It looks really like it's this cool explosion and the paladin's like, oh! But the icon is literally this. That's basically what you're doing. They've just added the explosion after, like, that comes after. That's expiación. Something like this, right? I've made the job icon, everyone. I think it's really funny. Just sometimes we don't realize that the actions have these like weirdly obvious icons. Like I mean, there's also the funny one like low blow provoke. That's just like a man when you combine them. I think orogeny is also like just a specific part of the attack animation. But it's interesting because on the one hand, I think making icons for job actions must be incredibly hard. Like, how did they come up with upheaval looking like this? Like, how did they come up with that? I guess it's like upheaval, like lifting rocks. And that's why they made it like that. And inner release is just the actual image of what it looks like from the front when a warrior uses inner release. it's like an ad. It's like, this is what you're going to look like when you press this. Like, so imagine you literally expunge the evil or misdeeds out of someone with expiation. Yeah, I guess so. It would, like, that's something that I've talked about before. Weirdly, and this is also something that I've specifically talked about before, that I feel like it would be really cool if we had just, you know, a little bit of story behind what happens when we're using these actions. Like, Final Fantasy XIV has like a relatively structured magic system, relatively structured, where they like things make sense in a way. Like, in the universe, things do make sense and do get explained. So it would be nice if we just get some explanations. Like, we can probably like put 2 and 2 together. Like, most of the crazy stuff a warrior does is like related to that whole inner beast thing that goes over in the story. But it would just be cool to understand. Like, something that I feel like is never really explained is, what's a polyglot and where do they come from? Like, why are they spent on xenoglossy? Like, I don't, like, I know, I understand that if they explained it, it would probably be like a really underwhelming explanation, but it's like a thing where it's like, why? Like, why does it work like that? And the reason why I think it's funny is because I've thought about this many times with Final Fantasy XIV. Meanwhile, I played World of Warcraft for longer and pretty much never ever asked questions about why something works the way that it does. And I think the reason why in Final Fantasy XIV you can get more like attached to the actions is because many of the actions have way fancier animations. Like, a mage in World of Warcraft used Fireball and shoots just like, pew, a ball of fire. Oh. Most melee attacks in World of Warcraft are like slashes, just one slash, just shoop, and it's relatively straightforward what it means. Meanwhile, in Final Fantasy XIV, you have attacks like Royal Authority that, you know, nowadays does like 3 things. There's no logical explanation to that because it didn't always work like that. But it would be nice to understand why. Like, I'm interested to know what, like, where does the Contra Sixt and Flesh animate? Like, what is that? Is that just ice magic? Why are those instant abilities like that when the rest of your magic isn't? Like, why are they special? Is it red magic? Does red magic have a specific affinity for ice magic? If so, why are none of your other spells ice? Stuff like that. Like, I'd just like to know that. I don't know if that is explained in like one of those like catalogs that you can buy that talk about these things. But those are the things I'm like, because the jobs like embellish their animations a lot more, it makes the actions feel more important, and because they feel more important, I get curious. Why? It's not magic? Well, what's it then? What is Contra Sixt? Is it just, it doesn't deal magic? That's true, it doesn't deal magic damage. Yeah, that is true, Wool. The magic of red mage is half black magic and half white magic, and we've talked about this before, mostly on the Discord server, I believe. But that's exactly it. Most of the way that red magic works, allegedly, is that they use their own ether through a magic focus, that thing, which amplifies it, but comes with the caveat that it corrupts the user's ether with black and white ether, like corrupted ether in a way, which isn't good for you. It's not healthy for you. And you then get rid of this build-up by channeling it through this weird rod, also called a rapier. But you need equal amounts of them to balance it out for some reason. But given that Flesh and Contra Sixt does, 1, not generate either, and 2, isn't even magic, that, like, just adds a lot of questions, right? Like, that just means, okay, so we know what everything else is, so what's that? That's what I'm thinking of. Morkius says, I mean, the definition of polyglot is containing or made up of several languages. I guess that translates to the cycling between fire and ice. It's made up of both energies. I mean, the thing is, xenoglossy is an equally absurdly weird word. It means the phenomenon of understanding a language in some way that you wouldn't naturally be capable of. So the meaning of the word itself basically tells us nothing, is what I'm getting at. That's why I'm like, so what is a polyglot? Is because looking up what polyglot means is meaningless, it feels like. Thank you, Wolf. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it's very cool that you beat it with Black Mage. That must have been difficult. Because a physical manifestation of your sword fighting skills. The understanding of the forbidden knowledge of magic? Of black magic? Well, Enochian is weird related to that. It's like occult language that is used for magic. Enochian magic, notably. So, like, there might be a correlation there that the polyglots are built up by Enochian, which is like a specific type of magic, like occult magic. So it's complicated, and that's why, like, the reason why I'm saying what are these things is specifically because if we try and figure out what they mean, we don't get to like a clear answer. So that's why we ask, right? Yeah, I could imagine Abyssals would be tough. As a, like, generally, raid boss fights can be really tough if you're doing them for the first time as Black Mage. But yeah, I don't know. Regarding Flesh and Contra Sixt. The thing is, as I mentioned earlier, they both refer to fencing techniques. Like, they refer to fencing techniques, but I can assure you that there is no fencing technique that looks like this. It does not look like that. And the fencing technique actually has nothing to do with something 6 times. It's just an enumeration. Like, according to what I could find, Contra Sixt is as related to the number 6 as redoublement. Redoublement are related to the number 3 because it's the step 3 of a combo. Contra Sixt is just the sixth on a list. Allegedly. Something like that. It's really weird. Really, really weird. And exactly, Catdamon, exactly! Where did my automaton queen come from? From space, apparently. And where did my turret go? How does the automaton queen work? Like, what came of that? Will we ever get an explanation of the tool that you use for, like, 4 of your actions? Where did Queen come from, God Night Joe? To the farm up. Where did my turret go? To the farm up state. I'm glad you could join, Lemon, and I do hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. The farm up state. Where did my pets that can fight in combat go, mister? Oh. Don't worry about it. The turret went to PvP, aha! Mokia says, why is Dark Knight magic manifested as dark or shadowy magic? I know it relies on emotion and stuff, but why can't I have happy emotions manifesting my magic? Does Dark Knight only draw power from negativity? Does Dark Knight only draw power from emotions? Do we know if that's a fact? It's been a while since I did the Dark Knight story, so I don't know if they just flat out say that. Wolf says, I'm trying to decide what next DPS class I want to level right now. I only have healers and Black Mage leveled, so all casters. In that case, maybe a tank or like a melee DPS. That would probably be the biggest jump in change. If you want some recommendations on that, I would probably recommend that you start with, like, if you're going into a role you've never played before, it might be healthy to start with one that starts at a lower level. And if you choose one that starts at a higher level, maybe, you know, start with some dungeons and content that starts, like, maybe, like, you know, start with lower level dungeons. So that you don't have to deal with the entire toolkit. In regards to tanks, Gunbreaker is generally considered the hardest tank to play, Ymir. While Warrior and Paladin are typically considered the easier ones to play, with each one presenting different difficulties. For melee DPS, I would say it would be a good idea to at least like learn the basics of a melee DPS as like monk, ninja, or dragoon, and then once you get like the basics, then you could try samurai or reaper if you'd rather do that. Ymir, I think I've talked about this before on the Discord. I might not, but here's the thing. If you see everything you're good at as it being easy, then you're downplaying your own skill. What thou should not do is say X is easy. Thou should say I am good at X. Because if you say something is easy, you're downplaying not only your skill. It might have been a joke. I'm still using it as a learning opportunity. If you say something is easy because you're good at it, then you're downplaying your efforts to get good at the thing, and anyone who finds it difficult might be hurt that they're told that they're bad, basically. If you instead say, I'm good at X, then you know, praise your own skill. Other people that are good at it are also praised as a side product, and the people that are bad at it don't feel bad about it. But fair enough, I wasn't sure if it was a joke, Ymir. Sometimes it's very difficult to get, like, a joke or a sarcastic comment even in text. So sorry about that. Let's see, I can play healer flawlessly, but tanking stresses me out a ton. I've got warrior to 35 and it's not my cup of tea. Well, if you don't like tanking, then you don't have to tank. It should be said that playing different roles can help you better understand it, making you better at the roles that you prefer. Like, if you really like playing healers, then getting better at tanking will make you a better healer, because you better understand the tanking perspective. If your perspective of a healer, like as a healer, is, I don't know how all that works because I don't like to play tank, then you might get the wrong idea. Nothing matches the aesthetic to me of Black Mage. Well, I think Dark Knight would be the closest to that. And then Reaper. Like, that would be the closest to Black Mage in those two roles. Okay, so the Dark Knight's magic is explained later on that your desire to protect others or care for others or whatever, those emotions manifest your powers. I thought. That's what the questline initially makes you think. That the Dark Knight draws from the abyss in you, Ymir said. But later on they explained it differently. Right. So, something that seems to be consistent in Final Fantasy XIV is that light magic is like the power to conserve and stop things, essentially. If you are overcome with light magic, as we see in Shadowbringers, the flow of ether in your body just stops entirely. Something to that effect. In contrast, or rather in opposition to that, dark magic, or rather darkness, is the power of motion and action. So if you're overcome with black magic or void, then you will eventually reach a point where the ether in your body cannot stop. Like, cannot stop. That's what happens in the void specifically. Because the entire universe in that existence is overcome with void magic, no one can stop living. Which makes that sounds a lot more positive than it is, right? But ether simply cannot cease, which can become a problem. So Dark Knights using what appears to be dark magic makes sense because your will to act and protect your friends in that way can be perceived as like the will to act and, you know, help protect your friends. Whereas that, of course, then leads to the counter question, because paladins use white magic, right? They use the light instead. Does that mean that paladins protect their friends by nothing? Like by doing the opposite of action? Exactly, I guess the will of defiance, going out of your comfort zone to put others before you, for example. And paladins then use white magic to either, you could see it as to conserve the current state of being. The current state of being for you. And similarly, to stop your enemies' advance by stopping whatever they're doing with your white magic. Like, you can, when we reach this point of speculation, you just start from the point of it's white magic, so how do we explain tanking with white magic? So like, we start with the conclusion and then explain the steps to get to that, which makes it sound very convenient. It would probably lead to a lot more satisfying of an explanation if we were to go, Dark Knight uses emotions for their magic, and then figure out, oh, so they use dark magic. Like, if we somehow came to the conclusion that way around, then we would probably have come to a much more satisfying explanation. But here we are. Right. Let's see. Will says, I've also encountered something I wanted to hear your thoughts on. White Mage has the Lily Gauge, and I find that most content the White Mage has way too much healing. I either overcap on lilies, or I have to spam them and overheal to get my Lily. Right. So what's the question? Yeah, so White Mages and Black Mages, their magic comes from mainly the ether around them, but they also supposedly use some part of their own ether, not very much. Basically, the contrast of White Mage, Black Mage, and Red Mage is that White Mage uses some of their own ether, presumably to influence what magic they're going to cast, and then they use the ether around them to, like, amplify that. Black Mages uses some small amount of their own ether to cast, like, to influence what they're going to cast, and then they use the ether around them to amplify that. Red Mages uses some of their own ether entirely to generate the spell, and then they use this focus to amplify the performance of the ether that they supplied it, to completely avoid using ambient ether, because danger. Do you think White Mage needs to be rebalanced or reworked? No, I don't. So, White Mage used to have a massive problem in regards to the lilies. Let me explain. For a long time, the way that in Shadowbringers and the start of Endwalker, I believe, Aflato's Misery did 900 potency. Remember, it does 1240 right now. The reason why it was significant that it did 900 is because in Shadowbringers, Glare 1 did 300 potency. It was nerfed to 290 for reasons. So that meant that Aflato's Misery was balanced around, well, it's worth 3 glares. That makes sense, right? The problem with that is that to cast Aflato's Misery, you have to use a Lily 3 times and then also Aflato's Misery, which means that it costs 4 glares to cast if we're going to be super optimized for nerfs, right? If we completely ignore the fact that those lilies probably were needed at some point, hopefully, then Aflato's Misery was considered a strict DPS loss, so people would rather not use them. At some point, so when Endwalker rolled around, Aflato's Misery stayed at 900 potency. Glare was moved to 290, meaning that Aflato's Misery was now 10% better, 3% better than 3 glares, which wasn't good enough. And then Glare 3 came in, making it completely pointless. Then they buffed Aflato's Misery. Aflato's Misery deals exactly the same damage as 4 Glare 3s, which means that it is not a DPS loss. If you plan so that you have Aflato's Misery ready when raid buffs come out, or someone gives you a raid buff of any capacity, like in casual content, then you can get more value out of it by just aggressively using lilies when you don't need them. Another thing to just consider while we're on the subject, originally you only got a lily every 30 seconds. They buffed that to every 20 seconds at some point in Endwalker. So if you feel like you get a little excessive amounts of lilies, that might be part of the reason. Because basically every 8th GCD that you cast could be a lily spell, right? More than that, because every time you've done it 3 times, you get Aflato's Misery. So basically, out of 24 GCDs, which is, a minute, 4 of them are going to be Lily related, which might feel like a lot when you don't need to heal all the time. But the reason why I think that's perfectly fine is because among the 4 healers, White Mage is like the one of them whose entire thematic aesthetic is that it is a healer. Like, Scholar's aesthetic is that it's, it's the pet thing, it has all this smart planning stuff. Good night, Cat Damon. Sage has its barriers, it has this, it's an attacking healer. Astrologian has this whole, card management, planning ahead. White Mage's aesthetic, its entire idea is basically, I'm a healer. That, the other 3 have, something, and then ... so I'm a healer. Whereas White Mage just starts with that, it just leads with, so I'm a healer. Which means that I do this, this, and this. The other 3 say, I do this, this, and this, which results in healing as a side product. And why that means that the excessive amount of healing you have as a White Mage at times makes sense is simply put that because Aflato's Misery isn't a DPS loss, it means that if you reach 3 lilies, most of the time your reaction is to just use Aflato's Rapture or Solace on someone who needs a bit of healing, which perfectly matches with what someone who picks up White Mage thinking, I want to be a healer. They get exactly what they're expecting to get. Because what are they expecting to get? They're expecting to get a healer. And White Mage is so much a healer that they're going to just... It's like a fountain just spewing out healing all across the battlefield, even when it's unneeded, because they just can heal that much. And you would only get this experience by having White Mage use an action that basically... The only motivation to use it is healing. but because a kickback of it is attacking, it means that it's not a loss to do it, so people will just use it anyway. So like, this jank with having healing spells that you will stockpile and you kind of feel like you have to use them, leads to this situation where you have a healer that has so much healing that they just kind of waste it at times. It feels weird, it feels wrong, it feels dumb, it feels silly, but it makes sense with what we're going for, I feel like. And the thing is, what would solve this? Amokyo says, what if we gave White Mage an option like Energy Drain to do damage with White Lilies while also feeding the Blood Lily? Amokyo, would you like to explain what that would mean for White Mages? Or do you want me to do it? You know, I'll just do it. That would mean that your lilies are for damage. Unless you have to use them for healing. That's the reason why you can't make the lilies have an attack option. Because if they have an attack option, that's going to be the default. Like, something they could do would be give you more space for lilies, but that wouldn't change the problem. It would just kick the ball down the street. It wouldn't change very much. And any solution that could give you a reason to spend the lilies when you don't need them would lead to you using them for that. Like, what alternative spender could we give White Mage for when they don't need the lilies for healing that wouldn't become a problem later down the line? Because I don't have any ideas. You give them an option to make it damage reduction. That's basically Sacred Soil or Karakoli, right? Doesn't really solve the problem. You could make them... You could make it so that they had a lily they could spend for like a long-term heal over time effect, like something that heals over 30 seconds or something and heals for like a decent amount, maybe slightly more than Rapture. So that you can use that to like deal with like topping up people over time. You could give them... I don't know. Maybe make it so that you could just eat the lily to get extra MP back or something. If that was ever a problem, it's not really a problem, but I mean, that's an option. The reason why I'm specifically avoiding damage is because if you look up scholar guides, it's pretty common when optimizing that ether flow is viewed as damage first and healing second. Like when optimizing. What that means is you're going to assume as a default state that you're going to be spending your ether flow on energy drain. The only reason you're not is because you have to use them on something else. So if you gave White Mage the ability to spend their healing lilies for damage, which is also weird if you think about it, it's called the healing gauge, then your default would be to spend them on that. And the extra silly thing with that is that the next expansion following such an addition would balance the White Mages, and maybe even the first major patch following such an addition would rebalance your glares, like your filler attacks, around the fact that you're going to be spending your lilies on damage entirely and exclusively. So what you're trading, if you're saying, couldn't I have like an attack to spend my lilies on, is sure, now you just don't get to use them for healing anymore. You're still doing the same damage, it's just more difficult. Because balance. But yeah, they could do that. Amokus, they could make it so that you could consume lilies to gain MP back, but I feel like the balance we have now is pretty fine. In fact, the lily spending itself has an invisible invisible version of what you just said. How glare costs 400 MP, and the default assumption is you're going to be using glare on cool like every time you can, if you can. Afflatus Solace, Afflatus Rapture, and Afflatus Misery does not cost any MP, so technically, by making the default assumption that you are going to use Glare 3, means that Glare 3 costs nothing, but Afflatus Solace, Rapture, and Misery recovers 400 MP by virtue of not costing anything. Pretty smart, huh? Wool says Scholar feels like the ARR. It feels like ARR, the healer. What I mean is, everything about it feels old or ancient. It's the only healer that I didn't level to 90. I hate playing Scholar. Scholar feels really janky. Well, it was more janky. That's not a particularly good rebuttal, but it was worse. It was a lot worse. Scholar has lost a lot over the years, but it might feel like one of the most confusing healer to play. Like, it's generally accepted that White Mage and Sage are the easy healers, and Scholar and Astrologian are the hard to play healers for different reasons. And the reasons make it so that Astrologian is generally considered to be the hardest healer to play, when playing it optimally, of course. Like, that applies in all cases. Like, when I say something is the hardest to play, I always make the default assumption that we're talking about when trying to play it optimally. Because if we're not assuming you're playing optimally, then, I mean, it's not very hard to spam Cure, is it? So, like, if you ever are in a discussion of whether something is difficult to play or not, it's just worth remembering that there's a massive difference between being able to play a job and being able to play it well. And you don't know if the other person is arguing from the perspective of, well, I press the buttons and things die. Like, I have a friend who really likes playing Machinist. And they claimed to be pretty knowledgeable on Machinist, given that they mained it for a while. For a while meaning years. Now, I know this person somewhat well. Not going to go into detail about who it is, of course. But I also know that they play Final Fantasy XIV, like, they don't play Final Fantasy XIV that much. So, them having mained the job for years can be interpreted, it can be interpreted as, for someone who don't know this person, oh, they've played Machinist only for years. Or they've been locked out as Machinist for years. And that discussion really, like, the cherry on top was when I explained to them why you're supposed to be using Gauss Round and Ricochet between your GCDs. Because they didn't know what an OGCD was. They claimed to be knowledgeable on the job. They didn't know the basics. So just remember that when you are in a discussion with some rando on the internet, that you don't know how much the person on the other side of this, like on the other side, actually knows and how much they're actually sharing. Similarly, they don't know you, so they might make the assumption that you're really dumb. I've sometimes been mistaken for basically a games journalist who doesn't know what I'm talking about because I make one mistake in a video. So, you know, exactly what it means for something to be hard or easy is complicated. And that's also why when I have made videos on the subject of things being hard or easy, I'm more inclined to give examples of what people might find hard or might find easy. Because ultimately, I have discovered, like, so what's the easiest DPS job in Final Fantasy XIV? Any suggestions on that one? Any inputs on that one? How dare you make mistakes in videos? Which DPS job do you feel is the easiest? Wolf says Reaper. Emir says Machinist. Are you playing the optimized rotation, Emir? That was a joke. Fair enough. I mean, Machinist is easy to some people. And Machinist plays extremely well even without playing optimally. Amokyo says, I wouldn't say any job is easy, actually. Fair point. And then Imi also added Summoner. So, generally, people agree that... Like, if I made a video and presented that the easiest job in each role was Warrior or Paladin, now, White Mage or Sage, Summoner, Dancer, and Reaper, then most people wouldn't argue against that. Some might argue that Paladin is clearly more difficult than Warrior, and some people might argue that Sage is clearly more difficult than White Mage. But to some degree, those are considered like the easiest jobs in the game. But that's like based on how you feel. Like, those jobs that I just listed are the jobs that I find easiest to play, incidentally. But I personally find Sage way easier to play than White Mage. Which I'm pretty sure some people would not agree with. And there's also people that believe that Red Mage is harder to play than Black Mage. And that might be true. I haven't played Red Mage to such perfection that I would know that. But I can understand the things that they outline as difficult. Might be more difficult, or at least they might hurt the job more. This is actually something that I brought up when I made the video on what makes a job difficult. Was that one of the things that can make a job difficult is how much it hurts to make a mistake. Like, if you do the wrong GCD, like, you're playing a job, you click the wrong GCD at the wrong, like, you click the wrong GCD at a specific time. How much does it hurt you, and how long does it hurt you? Summoner, before its rework, was considered by many the hardest job in the game, and you could do one wrong button press and it would hurt you for 2 minutes. At least, if you knew how to fix the problem at all. If you were good, you could put out the fire and only get hurt for like 30 seconds, but you got hurt more in the immediate present. But that was part of what caused Summoner to be that difficult, was that it was a 2-minute looping rotation. 2 minutes. And if you clicked the wrong thing at the wrong time, then it hurt you for 2 minutes. Like, the rest of that loop was ruined because of that mistake. And you had several opportunities to mess that up. Yeah, exactly. Messing up a Mudra's ninja hurts. So, like, those examples is what really hurts. But the reason that, like, the reason why I'm saying that it's complicated is also because, while some people say that Summoner is the easiest DPS job in the game, most of the people that say that, I don't think have read a Summoner tooltip recently. I've talked about this before. But I'm just saying, quite a lot of information. And just to be clear, this tooltip does not tell you what to do with your fire attunement. It doesn't say what to do with the Ifrit's favor. Both of those things, well, it actually does say that Gemshine and Precious Brilliance become fire aspected, but it doesn't say what that means. So it does say something happens related to these fire attunements. But you have to find Gemshine and Precious Brilliance while you have fire attunement to figure out, oh, that's what it means. And you might say, oh, but you could just read Ruby right, for example. You could, but it doesn't actually say that it originates from Gemshine. It doesn't say that that's what Gemshine becomes. And furthermore, before Ruby right, there isn't a Ruby Ruin, so before level 72, you have no way of knowing without using the button. So the reason why Summoner is considered so easy, I think, is because Summoner lends itself extremely well to the learning practice known as, ooh, new button. What does that do? Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, I can use this. Nice. And this. Nice. Then I can do this. Wow, incredible. I can do this. Oh, and I'm going to press this. And there's a new glowy button. Wow, incredible. And then I can use this. Oh, and now I have 3 glowy buttons. Incredible. Let me try and use this first. Oh, wow, that's wild. What happens if I do this? Oh, now I have 2 new glowy buttons. I wonder what they do. Oh, and I have a new glowy button. You get what I'm going with this, right? Like, Summoner's tooltips are ludicrously long. But it's like a really, really convoluted way of saying, press this, then that. Like, that's why a lot of people find Summoner so easy. Reaper has a lot of the same. Like, Gibbet and Gallows, for example, are designed to follow after Bloodstalk or Grimswathe or Gluttony. Like, it's more common in Endwalker that jobs have buttons that automatically follow from one another. Like, Warrior has Primal Rend that naturally follows an inner release. Samurai has Ogina Mikiri, which naturally follows Ikishotun and things like that. But before Reaper really came in with guns blazing with this, it was mostly Gunbreaker and Continuation, right? And Continuation actually explains all that in its tooltip. Like, that one actually explains it. But all of these, like, you do this, then that makes it, like, it means that the jobs get this design where they, the job itself explains to you how you're supposed to play it. Like, it just says you're supposed to do this. Wool says the hardest class is Dragoon. You're all wrong. My friend clicks every ability with his mouse and only plays Dragoon. That sounds hard. Legos. Amokia says, like I've mentioned, I haven't evolved Arcanist into Summoner yet, and it's at 90 due to Scholar. I feel like I'd need ages to learn it because it'll suddenly jump to a level 90 job. So this circles back to what I said before. If you pick up a job that is really high level, like start at a really high level, or Summoner Scholar in this case, where they can land at a really high level. If you want to learn the job, like, get appropriate gear for your item level. Or for your level, so that you have decent item level. Like, could be just be a crafted set, whatever. Just to be certain, right? Then you do this. And then you join. Then when you've figured out your buttons, then of course one thing you should do first is just fill out the first 18 levels of your pass, right? When you've done that, you do the dungeon. If it goes well, nice. Then you could do like this dungeon, fill out your pass up to level 30 or so. You go like maybe like a level 50 dungeon, few level 50 dungeons with a level 50 toolkit. You learn things bit by bit. Instead of having to deal with all of that all at once. You just take it piecemeal. If you feel like this is scary or annoying, you just do it with bots. Same deal. Like, the thing is, if you want to learn it, that's my recommendation. You can artificially recreate the experience of gradually leveling the job if you need it. If you don't need it, you can skip it, but it's there. And that's what my suggestion is if you want to learn Summon Amokius. But you would have to invest time that isn't going to be very rewarding. Like, doing Sastasha as a level 90 isn't going to be very rewarding. But it would be very learning, I'm sure. The alternative is just beating the ever-living daylights out of a striking dummy. You could do that too. Moon Woozy says, I love glowy buttons. I also love glowy buttons. Reaper, Emir says, I find Reaper hard. I find most melee DPS hard. I mean, I also find most melee DPS hard. They're hard in different ways. Wolf says, ninja is hard, apparently, because I've never seen a ninja who doesn't use Doton on a single target. I've seen a lot of them that don't do that, but we do have a meme around here about calling it out whenever we see a single target Doton. If we're doing an alliance raid or a trial, whatever it is, and we see a random ninja using single target Doton, we point it out. Because it's incorrect. There's no level at all in the game where Doton is better than Raiton on a single target. No level. So it's always wrong to do it. Always. There might be like a singular exception, but those exceptions are almost always... Oh, there's ad spawning. So it's not single target anymore then. Pretty sure there's no proper real single target Doton being good exceptions. But it originates from a misunderstanding from back in the day when Doton was better than Raiton. And nowadays, this kind of misunderstanding is perpetuated because there are some ninjas that use Doton on single target because they don't know better. There are some that use it because they've seen others do it. And there are also some that just do it because they think that because it's 3 mudras instead of 2, it's better. But yeah, the best you can do is tell people. When you see the single target Doton ninjas, just go, just use Raiton if it's a single target. But it might be difficult to explain to them in the moment. Because then they might not get it at first. Maybe there's also the possibility that they say, you don't pay my sub or something like that. Oh, there are also Burger King crowns. But they could similarly have misunderstood it. Just like how you can see a legend playing really poorly because they're leveling a job they haven't played before, you can see a mentor playing really poorly because they're playing a job that they're not that familiar with. In both cases, they could have just turned off the title or the crown, and then the misunderstanding would have been alleviated, right? Wolf says, my friend and I made an Excel spreadsheet for the Heavensward relic materials list. I believe the total amount with only tomes was 23,000. Yeah, I remember that I took a very cursory glance at it for my video on Poetics, like Tomestones of Poetics, and found that it was at least over 20,000. My inventory looks a little cramped. Yeah, it does. Most of the 2 top inventories need to be cleaned. It's just, I haven't cleaned them today. I'll do that after the stream. But it does look a little crazy. I was surprised that we got so easily and smoothly through all those dungeons. I could imagine that maybe... I think it might not actually be possible to do the burn solo. And I could also imagine that Gimlet Dark might not be doable solo. I have no idea about the other 3. So who knows? Maybe maybe next time I'll do like a. I'm pretty sure these 3 dungeons are all optional. So maybe we'll do like a side dungeons, and then later we'll do or depending, we might do Burn and Gimlet Dark. last. It's like we do the side ones and then the main ones, because Burn and Gimlet Dark are main quest stuff. But I'll figure that out. But I am surprised that after the immense difficulty we had in Alamego, that the side dungeons here we've been doing are so easy. Right. Monkey King. You'd like a burger? I don't have one. I can give you a boiled egg. Anyway, if you enjoyed the wonderful people you've seen on this stream in the chat, you'll see that there is a Discord community server that you can join, where you'll find most of the wonderful people you've seen, and you'll also find me. You'll also find a weekly schedule where you can see what else is happening on the channel this week. It's usually updated Sunday or Monday, so there's usually several days to react to what you want to see. You can also find the announcement room, where I post a link whenever there's a new video, a new stream, whatever it is. It usually shows up there first. You can also go into the role assignments room and find the reminder role. If you grab that, you will get a notification whenever I post a link to a video or a stream or whatever it is. And you will also get a notification about 15 minutes beforehand if it's something time sensitive, like the start of a stream. And if you did enjoy this stream, then it helps me a lot if you leave a like on the stream itself. You know, the thumbs up in the YouTube system, it tells YouTube that this was a very enjoyable stream and you'd like other people to watch it as well. And that helps me a lot. So thank you so much in advance. I think that is everything that I have for tonight. We got 3 dungeons done. Each of them took less than an hour each. That was very nice. Yeah. Tomorrow I have a video coming out about what, speaking of burger crowns, what a mentor is actually supposed to be doing. Because that is something that is not entirely clear. And you might actually realize that the burger crown, while very mean, isn't too bad. Or isn't too surprising that it exists, at the very least. But with that said, good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye.